Captive of the Dark Elf by Celeste King.
Book 2 of The Dark Elves of Protheka.
Imagine an innocent daughter following her father to his work as the head groundskeeper for a dark elf noble.
This young woman is curious and stumbles into a room she doesn't belong in.
The dark elf sees her, and his desires inflamed. He literally takes her from her father.
What do you think happens to her after that? You're going to have to continue listening to find out.
Of course, don't forget to check out the unabridged version of any Celeste King audiobook on worldsofprotheka.com. Use that discount code YouTube 30 for 30% off any digital product.
Take a moment to subscribe to the channel and help us keep the free, full audiobook train coming straight to your feed. Liking and commenting on these videos to let us know what you think also shows your support. And we love your feedback.
This is Celeste King's Captive of the Dark Elf.
Chapter 1. Jenny. I step back into the shadows just before my father turns around. I know this route by hand and know exactly where I need to hide as I sneak behind him to Haftar's mansion. Dad has worked there for as long as I can remember. When I was younger, he used to bring me with him, but once I was old enough to take care of myself, he figured I could better entertain myself than he could while he went about his work as the gardener. It's never a good idea to take a young human woman out where the elves will see her. It's been drilled into me from as early as I can remember. If they come to touch you, close your eyes and pray to whatever gods have forsaken us that the moment will pass. If they do anything more, then don't struggle. The elves like it when humans struggle. They like seeing us squirm, like animals. But if we struggle too much and hurt them in the process, they'll find Dad and Mom and anyone I know and kill them. They'll make my father watch as they ruin all the women in his house. Just for struggling. Dad's always warned me that humans don't belong on this world. We do what we can to survive, but we're not from Protheka. We came here through the Great Rift, and who knows if we'll ever go back. But the other races on this planet, we need to remember they're not human. They don't have compassion. They don't have mercy. It was always safer if I stay at home. But what he didn't know was that I'd much rather be with him than home alone, especially now that my brother has a job of his own. Maybe not so much with my dad as in Haftar's house. It's more of a mansion, really. My mother works in another dark elf's house as a maid. I went with my father when I was younger because Haftar's place was always safer. I never asked my mother what made her employer's house not safe. But as I grew older, I realised I didn't want to know the details. I've heard the things dark elves do to their human servants. That's perhaps why my parents refused to let me work for one. It hasn't left me with many options for work or much else to do. My dad would probably die if he knew I was sneaking into Haftar's place, but I can't help it. I need the music. Haftar is a Chivduyu, the caste of dark elves that are the artisans, and he plays the most beautiful music. Even on the bad days, it always made me feel better. And there were a lot of bad days. For humans, life on Protheka is hard. I've heard the stories about how we used to be from some other planet called Earth until generations ago, when the Great Rift dropped millions of us here, and we were left to the not-so-tender mercies of our new dark elf masters. But Haftar is different. He's never been cruel. I know about other dark elf masters who delight in tormenting humans. Haftar mostly keeps to himself and just makes his beautiful music. He was gone a lot, though. When my father reaches the mansion, he nods at the guards, Arshodo and Anofna. The two dark elf twin sisters were both hired by Haftar to keep his mansion safe before I was even born. Like their boss, they aren't cruel to humans if they don't have to be. But I've seen what they can do if someone dares to threaten the sanctity of this place. When my father is far enough ahead, I follow behind and just nod at the sisters. They're used to me being here, and I think they assume I just work with my father now since I've always been here. Or maybe they don't think I'm a threat. If they ever find out I'm not supposed to be there, I'm not sure what they'll do to me, but I have to risk it. I need the music. "Good morning, ladies," I say. "Good morning, Jenny," Anofna replies in her sweet voice. Arshodo, only nods and says in her more sombre baritone, "Ms. Jones." Their voices are the only way I can ever tell the two of them apart. A sound of chains jangling draws my attention. 3 human men, naked, with their legs chained, walks past us. Their Naga slave driver prods them along. They carry jars of milk and honey. Human slaves from Nagaland have been providing milk and honey service to dark elf homes for as long as I can remember. I think back to stories my father used to tell me about, how prior to the Great Rift, humans were not just slaves and servants. It seems inconceivable. I turn back to the main attraction. The house. The house's routine hasn't changed since I was still crawling, so with 24 years' worth of confidence, I wait until I'm sure the maids have moved to the other side of the mansion before I sneak into Haftar's music room, just off the dining room. If no one is on this end, I can play without fear of being heard. I can imagine they don't want to disturb anyone sleeping in, since this half of the house is also where most of the bedrooms are. When Haftar came out here to play, I loved to listen. There's a statue tucked into an alcove just by the door. I can comfortably hide behind there and listen to Haftar's music, at least on the days when he's home. But on days like today, when he's away, it's a relatively safe place for me to practice without anyone in the house hearing. I don't know if it's because I've always been surrounded by it, but I have an affinity for music. I have no formal training, but I've managed to teach myself how to play most of the instruments here. It's meant memorising Haftar's schedule and knowing when he's in and out of the house, but I've managed to learn a lot. After using his washroom to clean my hands, I pick up Haftar's Ilya and tuck the body of it under my chin before I pick up the bow and draw it across the strings. From what I can gather from the books I've read, Earth had similar instruments. There must only be so many ways to arrange strings and wood to make music, but the Dark Elves don't take kindly to their craftsmanship being compared to human inventions. So while, as I understand it, the Ilya is like a violin, calling it that would likely end very poorly for whatever human decided to drudge up the old name from a forgotten world. I start to play, but thinking about the ancestral home of my people must have distracted me because, after only a few moments, the strings scream out a shrill and sour note. There are some limitations to being self-taught. I always have trouble getting that note right. I set the Ilya and the bow back on their stand. It's not my favourite instrument really, but I keep trying. My favourite is the homre, which is like an Ilya, but much larger, and is played by standing it upright. The nostalgia for a place I've never been stirs up the word cello. I sit in the chair with one of the homre between my knees and draw out a deep, resonating note from the strings. "Much better," I say. Then I launch into playing my song. When I started doing this, all I did was copy Haftar's tunes and sing his songs. But over the past few years, I've started experimenting with my own. I have quite a few, all stored in my head. I wouldn't even know how to write down the notes. But of all of them, this one is my favourite. Even though I completed it years ago, I still haven't picked a title I like yet. What do you name a song about music? I play it out, letting the music flow through me. I used to think the only way I could find happiness was by listening to Haftar's music, but he wasn't always here, and so that was why I had to learn to play. It's not quite the same, but close. I get a different sort of happiness from making my own music, even if many of my songs are sad. It's the best way to get my emotions out. The bow of my borrowed homre draws out the notes as I start to sing. I pour all my longing into it. I want to be part of the music. I'd love to be able to share it with others, but there's no chance. I have these songs in me, and no one I can sing them to. My family doesn't know because I'd have to explain how I learned it, and I don't have a lot of friends beyond them. Most of the kids I grew up with have been conscripted to work for some dark elf doing the 13 knows what. But I love it so much. I will write my songs in secret and sing them in silence if I must, because the music is the only thing that keeps me alive most days. It feels good to be singing and playing the homre. I never want to stop. I know I have to keep an eye on the time and be out of here before any of the house staff is anywhere near this room. Just a few more minutes. Just one more song. One more song couldn't hurt, right?
Chapter 2. Haftar. My dreams have been so muffled and dull lately. It's like the music has been taunting me, just barely letting me hear it, teasing me with the inspiration it could bring. But this time, it is different. I hear the music clearly. A song about secret music, yes. Wanting others to hear, but fear keeping you back, that's it. But it's so very strange hearing this song because I'm not the one singing it. Usually, it's my voice singing when I dream of music. My dreams have always been where those last elusive notes of a song I've been working on have come from. I can't decide if this means I should let someone else sing one of my songs, or maybe part of it. I should figure that out later. Then there's a nagging sensation, pulling me away, distracting me. I want to stay in my warm bed, surrounded by this music. I sit up, realizing I'm in my bed and not in a dream, and I can still hear the music. But it takes me a minute to put my world in order. I'm hearing beautiful music, but not just in my head. It's an actual sound coming from down the hall. That's preposterous. No one would dare to touch my instruments. I'm torn between springing from bed to see what's going on or sitting back and enjoying the music. Even sitting up in bed, reasonably sure I'm awake, I start to think I must still be dreaming because it's such an impossibility. The twins, Arshodo and Anafna, keep intruders out of my sanctuary. I've only ever needed them because I've taken great pains to keep this place a secret. It's even warded against scrying. So, what could possibly have transpired for me to end up with an interloper playing my instruments? This has never happened before. Or has it? Has someone been in my home using my instruments while I've been away? I did return late last night, coming home without really telling anyone. I needed a break. The constant travel for the previous few months was exhausting me, and I felt like my last performance was subpar at best. Everyone still clapped, though. But I knew that it was all hollow. I hadn't felt inspired in years. I'd given up so much for my music, but it had abandoned me lately. I got my big break when an acquaintance of the king heard it. After you play for the king, so many doors open for you. I had fame and money, which many would think is the point of it all, but my dream had turned into my living nightmare. Everyone wanted to hear my music, and as the demands on my time became more and more, I felt less and less inspired. Everything left me an emotional gray wasteland. Every performance was me just going through the motions by rote. But this music is stirring up a flood of emotions. Yes, there's anger at the audacity of someone violating the sanctity of my home, but doing so to create this? I'm not sure how I feel about that. I have to investigate. I throw the covers off myself and leap to the floor. I grab a robe, not wanting to be completely naked in front of an intruder. Then I walk up slowly to the door of the music room, listening as I go. When I'm outside my performance space, I'm careful to avoid the squeaky floorboard. I don't want to scare away the woman who is singing. I'm pretty sure it's a woman. But while she'll need to face the consequences of her actions, I don't want to stop her just yet. I try to think who it could possibly be. Has one of the twins been harboring a secret talent all these years? The door to the music room is open just a crack. Sitting in the chair, the hombre between her thighs, is a human girl. I really didn't know who to expect, but a human certainly wasn't something I'd considered as a possibility. Someone else playing my instruments is already so bizarre that even seeing it with my own eyes has me again wondering if I'm actually in the waking world. But when I realized someone was using my instruments, I was expecting to see a dark elf sitting there, taking my place on the little raised platform from which I'd entertained guests. The second wave of shock from seeing a human is almost enough to convince me that I am still dreaming. The playing is so skilled, and the boldness of the action so brazen. She must be either very brave or very stupid to do this. Watching her through the crack in the door, I decide it has to be bravery, because her deep brown eyes sparkle with a fierce intelligence. She's pleasant looking for a human. Long black hair, pulled back away from her face in a ponytail. Her skin is a darkened bronze and nearly flawless, except for 2 small moles on her neck, side by side. But they add character. She's dressed in simple clothes, a shirt, and rough pants. But the cut of them is flattering even for meager garb. I watch the way she almost glows in the warm morning sunlight pouring through the window. I'm ready to tell her she's been caught, but that would mean interrupting her music, and I don't want to do that. Not yet. I have to hear the song she's singing to completion. I can feel a lightness that I haven't in a long time, just enjoying listening to someone play an instrument well and singing with a beautiful voice. There is also some other feeling, distant and new, something I haven't quite felt before, an emotion too fragile and fledging to bring into focus, but it colors my world and makes it all seem brighter somehow. I close my eyes and just listen. I have a million questions, but I don't know where to begin, at least not as long as she keeps playing. I feel spellbound by her music, and in the darkness, behind my eyes, I can almost see it, the way the melody flows. Then she crescendos and the song fades. I'm left breathless, standing there in the doorway. I open my eyes and see her again, but it feels like something has changed. The feeling of warmth I got from her while listening to her music remains as the last notes fade away. I get lost in it, enough that she starts up again. I should stop her, but the thought pains me, so I tell myself I will confront her after this song. All I need to do is not get so swept up in it that I can't open the door next time she reaches the end. And I know that I'll have to do it between songs, or I would end up letting her play on as long as she keeps playing. But this can't be allowed to continue forever. So, I wait and listen. Following the notes in progression, I start to anticipate the path her song will take. The peaks and valleys of the rhythm make almost familiar patterns, but then deviate in surprising ways. I can hear my influence in the music. It's subtle, and most people wouldn't notice, but it's there. I have so many questions I want to ask, but I can't let this woman just keep doing this. Who knows how long she's been meddling with my instruments? When she reaches the final note of her song, I take a deep breath, and before she can start again and hold me spellbound once more, I let myself feel the anger at the violation. I burst into the room and growl, "Who in the deceiver's name are you?"
Chapter 3. Jenny. Apparently, one more song can hurt. Someone bursts into the room, frightening me half to death, and seeing that it's Haftar nearly finishes me. He wasn't supposed to return home for another 2 weeks. The shock of it all causes my grip on the hombre to falter, and the instrument falls from my hand. For a terrible moment, time slows to a crawl as I watch it drop to the floor. I can see my entire life ending right there. What I've done is easily a death sentence. I've trespassed on a dark elf's property and taken liberties with his possessions. Haftar hasn't been unnecessarily cruel, but there's never been any necessity to test just what happens when he's angry. And from the look in his eye and the tone of his voice, I'd have to be completely daft not to see that he's furious with me, and I can't even think of a good reason he shouldn't be. Then with a terrible crash, the hombre hits the floor. I can only look at him because I'm afraid of what damage my clumsiness might have done to that beautiful instrument. I can't believe how careless I've been. I could have just ruined a family heirloom. And all because I'd grown so complacent that I didn't think to check if Haftar was home before I started playing. Haftar moves so fast, like all the time that stilled while the instrument fell suddenly caught up, and he's standing in front of me in an instant. I leap back, knocking the chair to the floor. He seizes my wrist and pulls me back to him. I'm half grateful, because I felt like I was about to topple backward. That would have been a painful fall onto the upturned chair, but his grip on me is also painful. I know from how sore my hands were after I first started playing these instruments that sustained playing takes strength, and the grip is almost crushing, grinding bone on bone. I stifle a cry of pain. With his other hand, he picks up the hombre, and I can see a long splintered crack up the entire body. I feel like I might be sick. I'll ask one more time, and you best answer, or I will make you wish you'd never been born. Who are you? He asks through gritted teeth. My mind is suddenly blank, as if my own name is some foreign concept I barely understand. His eyes flash with more intense anger at my slack-jawed silence. Who are you to come in here, slip past my guards, and get your filthy hands all over my instruments? I almost object. I'm extremely careful to make sure my hands are clean before I touch his instruments, but it doesn't seem like the time to argue that particular point. Not that I could if I wanted to. My mouth has suddenly stopped working as I try to explain myself to the enraged dark elf. All that comes out are the half-formed sounds of the starts of words in between the sobs that I'm trying and failing to choke back. Haftar sets the broken homri back on its stand, and then he drags me out into the hall and pins me to the wall just beside the alcove where I hid to listen to him so many times before. It always felt so cosy and safe. Not so much anymore. Start making sense, or you will live only long enough to regret wasting my time with your useless babbling. Who are you? Finally, I'm able to form words. Jennifer. That answer is meaningless. How did you manage to get in here? His grip on my wrist tightens more, and I can't help but shriek from the pain. Please, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to play music. I don't get a chance. I can't afford an instrument of my own. Please forgive me. I promise I'll never do it again. Just please let me go. You're hurting me. You still haven't answered my question. How did you get in here? All my worst nightmares are coming true. Telling him the truth is my only option. I've never been a good liar. Had the twins ever actually asked me what I was doing when I came in, they'd have ended my adventures in composition right then and there. I'm Jennifer Jones. My father is Daniel Jones, your gardener. Haftar's eyes narrow at me, and I can feel my entire body shaking. The pain around my wrist is excruciating, and I've given up on trying to hide my fear and pain. I'm already so exhausted I couldn't do it, even if I thought it might help. Please, sir, you're hurting me, I plead through tears. He stares down at me, contempt dripping from every pore, but his grip on my wrist loosens. It still hurts, but I no longer feel like the bones are about to snap. Thank you, I say. You understand? I could do so much worse to you, and there would be nothing you or your useless father could do about it, right? Humans have very little in the way of rights, and human trespassers have none. I realise, I say with a tremble. I could take out and make you my toy for my lust games, and then ask every minotaur in the arena to have his way with you before sending you to the snakeheads forever. You'd never see your useless gardener father again. My face hardens. I want to argue that my father isn't useless, that he works very hard every day to serve Haftar, and has done so for years, providing for me, my mother, and my younger brother. But I don't think contradicting Haftar and drawing more attention to how we rely on him for our daily needs is a good idea right now. I don't want him to fire my father, or to have minotaurs have their way with me. Even with both my parents working, we are barely able to survive. Instead, I start begging. Please forgive me, sir. I'll never do it again. I'll do anything to make up for it, I say, almost immediately regretting it, because I know the things human women have been made to do for dark elf masters. I don't want to give him any ideas. But if it's what I have to do to keep him from taking away my father's job, I'd do it. A part of me shudders as I think about the stories that have been whispered in hushed tones about the dark elves and their depredations on humanity over the years. An entire family bred in slavery by one dark elf noble, so that he could satisfy his deviant urges on each of them at each stage of their lives. A human woman shopping in a human market who caught the attention of a dark elf guard because of a new hair ribbon that she had purchased. He took two of his compatriots as they grabbed her in the centre of the market and ripped off her clothes, While his comrades kept the human crowd cowed with magic, he repeatedly satisfied his lust by abusing her mouth and core until she was nothing more than a lump of flesh. All the while he ensured that the entire market was watching. When he was done, he slit her throat, leaving her broken carcass for others to clean up. Her husband and children buried her the next day. To prevent them from fostering vengeance, the noble that the guard worked for ensured that the family was seized the next day. They were separated and sold into slavery on different continents, all because of a shiny hair ribbon. I wonder if a similar fate is to befall me as I look up at the dark elf master hovering over me. His other hand rises towards my face, and for a moment I think he's going to slap me. I tense, anticipating the blow, but instead he roughly grabs my chin and bends down, so his face is almost pressed forehead to forehead with mine. Then, very suddenly, he releases me and pushes back like I've burned him or something. The force of it is enough to press me painfully against the wall. He turns his back to me, and for a moment I contemplate running away. But I know that would only make things so much worse for my father and me. Perhaps I should whip your father like he should have whipped you into obedience, or sold to pay for your trespasses. His voice is cold. No, sir. Please don't hurt my father. I'm the one who did it. He doesn't know I do this. Haftar turned back to me. And how often do you do this? Please, sir. You have to understand, I love music. Your music. I love it so much. Answer the question. Trembling under the weight of his angry stare, I swallow hard and then say, every day. When you're here, I just listen outside your door, and when you're gone, I practice. How long have you been doing this? Since I was about 10. And how old are you now? 24. For that long? His tone betrays genuine surprise. You must really love music. Perhaps you should stay. For a shining moment, I think that our mutual love of music has bridged the gap between our people, and this might actually be all right. But the feeling is short-lived. I'm going to fire the rest of the house staff, and you are going to take their place. You will work for me, for free, until you've worked off the cost to repair the instrument you broke. What? The shock of it loosens my lips, and the word spills out before I can even stop it. Haftar's eyes flash with fresh anger, and he steps toward me again, his hand raised.
Chapter 4. Haftar. Jennifer flinches as I grab her by the shoulders and press her against the wall again. You should consider yourself lucky that I don't add the cost of 14 years' worth of music lessons to the bill. I could send you as a comfort woman to the gladiator arena on Milthar if I wanted to. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I release her and say, follow me. When we get to my bedroom, I say, stay here, don't move. If you flee, I will have you hunted down. I go into my room, put on some real clothes, and grab a few other items. Then I step back out into the hall. She hasn't moved an inch. Come with me, I say. She falls in step behind me as I march down the hall, my footfalls causing the glasswork in the wall sconces to rattle. Then I see one of the maids dusting the furniture in the sitting room. You! She jumps, startled as though she expected my stomping to just pass her by. Yes, sir. How can I help you? She asks in her small, obedient voice. I want you to gather everyone, all the house and ground staff, and bring them here immediately. She courtesies and then scampers off. I turn to Jennifer and point to a spot on the floor in the middle of the room. Stand there, don't move. Keep your mouth shut. Jennifer nods and does exactly as she was told. It's not long before everyone is gathered, and I can see the look on the gardener's face when he sees his daughter standing in the middle of the room. There's fear in his eyes. And for a second I can see him ready to go to her, but he stays with the rest of the staff. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Jennifer Jones. The room is dead silent, except for the occasional sniffle from Jennifer. It turns out Jennifer here has been sneaking into my house for the past 14 years and has had the audacity to use my instruments. 14 years and not a single one of you noticed. You are all obviously incompetent or complacent, and I can't have that. So, effective immediately. You're all fired. She'll be doing your work for you. You will receive your remaining pay for your time worked, but you will leave and never set foot on the premises ever again. Suddenly, several begin begging and asking questions like why one unruly girl should mean they're fired. But I notice the gardener remains silent, just looking at his daughter. If you don't all shut up and accept your final pay, no one is getting paid, I say, drawing out my coin purse. They fall silent again, with a few joining Jennifer in a chorus of occasional sobs. I can see the way they all glare at her and her father. Daniel waits at the back of the line, his eyes darting to his daughter, who is doing her best to study the carpet. When he comes up to me and I hand him the few coins he still owed, he looks up at me, eyes pleading for mercy, but he doesn't say a word. You may say goodbye to your daughter, I reply, taking a seat on the sofa and watching. The way he looks at me makes it obvious he expected some privacy, but I'll be giving him nothing of the sort. He walks up to her and lifts her chin until their eyes meet, and she immediately bursts into a fresh wave of heaving sobs with tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Daddy. I didn't mean for this to happen. I just loved the music. When you stopped bringing me with you, I got really sad, so I started sneaking in after you. And Her father cuts her off with a hug, and she sobs into his chest. Over the top of her head, I see the look on his face. He's angry, but I'm not sure who he's most angry with. Her, me, or himself. He strokes her hair, trying and failing to comfort her. That's enough, Mr. Jones. It's time to leave. I see the first spark of defiance in his eyes as he looks at me, anger burning in him. He opens his mouth, I'm sure ready to object, but I glare back at him. He knows that I could make this situation so much worse. So instead, he says, "Goodbye, Jenny dear." Jennifer tries to cling to her father as he pulls away, but he pushes her back and says, "I love you." "I love you too, Daddy," she replies, her voice choked with tears. He turns and walks out, leaving me with his daughter. She stands there sobbing for a moment. When the noise has grown too irksome to tolerate, I stand and say, "That's enough crying. Come with me." She stifles the worst of the sobs as I walk her down the hall to a room on the other side of my performance room. It's where one of the other maids had slept. She won't be needing it or any of the clothes I'd given her anymore, and she was about Jennifer's size. I point to the bed and say, "Sit." She shuffles past me and then sits on the edge of the bed, trembling. Her voice quaking, she asks, "What would you have me do now?" There's a moment's pause before she adds, "Sir, stay there. Think about how you're going to work your debt off to me." "How much?" she asks. "What?" "How much do I owe you?" "I won't be sure until I have it looked at, but don't expect to be going anywhere anytime soon," I say, turning and slamming the door behind me. I go into my music room and examine the hombre. The crack in the wood is significant. It's not my only one, not even the favorite of the ones that I have. Those are all in my study, next to my bedroom. I wouldn't need to get it fixed even, but I will, even though the repair will be expensive. Not that money has been a worry for me. I have plenty of financial resources. It's the creative ones I've been struggling to maintain. But at the moment, my passion is up. I look at the instruments around me, but they won't do. Instead, I turn and walk to my bedroom and then through the curtain into my private study. I take a seat on the bench in front of my jinrayaha, my favorite instrument. Had she damaged this, I'm not sure what I would have done. It was my prized possession, my first love. I was insulted the first time after the Great Rift, when a human said they played an instrument like it back home. A piano. What a ridiculous word. And ridiculous to think they could ever match this craftsmanship or sound. I run my fingers over the keys for a moment, savoring how smooth they feel, cool under my fingertips. It's been a while since I've had a chance to just play something new. Since I felt like I could. I'm almost unsure where to start. The tumult of emotions makes it hard to settle on any one idea. Before, the problem was, I had no ideas. Now, I have too many, and they're all swirling around in my head, begging for attention. Finally, I choose one and go with it. The keys start to dance under my fingertips and the sound fills the room. I haven't felt this way in ages, but I'm only a few minutes into creating something new when the feeling starts to fade, and my fingers slow before they start to falter. I scream out in frustration as I slam the cover shut on the Jin Rayaha. How could I have been so close to something, and now it's gone? To go from so many ideas to nothing in an instant is maddening. I storm out of the room, my skin hot with a new, sour breed of anger.
Chapter 5. Jenny. I'm crying so hard I feel like I might be sick. Everything started out so good this morning, and I can't believe it all fell apart so fast. Eventually my sobs stop. I don't feel better, but I think my body is all dried up, and I have no more tears left. I look around the room. It's nice. Of course it is. The whole mansion is just lovely. I finally feel how comfortable the big mattress is under me, but I get up, shaking my head. I don't want to feel comfortable right now. I open a large dresser, and it's full of clothes. Some of them might even fit me. I don't know whose room this was, but they must have been close to my size. And the clothes are nice, much nicer than anything that I have ever owned. I slam the drawer shut. As lovely as the trappings are, this is still a damn prison. And what exactly is Haftar thinking I'm going to do? Perhaps he's fine until he's angry, and then the real monster comes out, and he just wants a pet to torture. He can't really expect me to keep the whole place clean all by myself. It's a mansion after all. Why did he have to fire everyone? And why did he have to make it so public and so cruel? To do so with me there, blaming me for it, was something I'd never have expected from him. Everyone was so angry. I could feel it in the room. I think some of them would have killed me if Haftar said they could. I can't imagine what will be waiting for my father when he gets home. I flop face down on the mattress and cover my head with the pillows, trying to drown out the world. I don't want to think about what could be happening at home. I don't know if I may be drifted off to sleep or what, but I'm startled when my door slams open. I sit up, looking at Haftar standing in the doorway, his expression as dark and angry as an oncoming storm. His nostrils flare when he sees me, and I want to run and hide, but I have a feeling doing so would only make whatever is coming worse. He walks up and drags me out of the bed. When I falter and fall to the floor, he pulls me roughly to my feet. My heart pounds as my mind plays through 1,000,001 ways. He could really hurt me. His treatment is harsh, but I know that he could do far worse to me, and it sends my heart racing. Then he pulls me towards the door. I start to panic. Has he had enough and has decided he's just going to kill me? I can feel how hot his skin is, like the fire of his fury is threatening to burn me right through his flesh. He starts to drag me down the hall. That's when I notice he's pulling me in the direction we'd gone before when he went to get dressed. He's pulling me towards his bedroom. Then I really start to struggle and scream, but he's so much larger and stronger than me. I keep fighting even though I know that it's pointless. I suppose he doesn't just want me for my cleaning skills. Not that I have anything to offer in this area. I've never had sex before, but skill isn't required if all he wants is to use my body to take his frustrations out on. When I see the bed, I dip into the last of my strength and I manage to slip his grip. But I'm free only for a second before he picks me up off the ground, and then walks me right past the bed to a curtained-off area on the far side of the room. In my confusion, I stop thrashing and just stare at him. When he opens the curtain, I see some of the most beautiful instruments I have ever seen. Before, I thought the ones I had played on were amazing, but they pale in comparison to how delicate and detailed these are. All of the fear and panic I felt moments ago melts away, only for it to return when Haftar says, "You will play for me. Show me what you've learned. If you fail to impress, I'll be forced to whip you." But while fear is back, I'm also elated that he's going to allow me to play music, and on such beautiful instruments. I can't believe it. I look around the room. If he wants me to impress him, then I'd better use the instrument I'm most comfortable with, even if it's slightly tarnished by the fact that I so recently broke one. I tenderly pick up an immaculate hombre from the stand. It feels light and delicate, but fits so naturally in my hand. When I sit, it barely feels like I'm holding anything. I don't know if this was handcrafted, or if it was woven together with arcane magic. Given how freely the Dark Elves use magic, I wouldn't be surprised if the intricate patterns carved into the wood were spellwork. I get myself into position, my heart singing at the opportunity to use this instrument that already feels like an extension of my body and soul. But then I see Haftar eyeing me. In my excitement, I'd all but forgotten he was even in the room with me. Suddenly, the hombre feels like it weighs more than 1,000 pounds, and I almost drop it. I manage to hold tight and take a deep breath. Drawing the bow across the strings, I test it out. It doesn't sound quite right. I adjust the tuning peg slightly as Haftar continues to glare at me. I do my best to ignore him as I finger the strings and try again. That's much better. Then I start to play one of my songs. I'm hoping something upbeat might put him in a better mood. I'd have better luck if my fingers didn't feel like they were trembling from anxiety. The growl Haftar makes carries a warning. I have to do better, or he will whip me. With what, I can't imagine, but I'm sure he will find something suitably painful and degrading. I take a deep breath and start again, doing my best to put him out of my head. It's difficult with him sitting only a few feet away from me, his eyes boring into me. But I concentrate on the music, and after a few bars, it feels like the rest of the world melts away until it's just me, the hombre, and the sweet music we can make together. It feels like dancing with a partner who moves gracefully with you. Granted, I wouldn't really know. I've never really danced with anyone. But I imagine this is what it would feel like to lead a skilled and willing partner across the dance floor. The hombre responds so obediently to my touch, and I close my eyes, becoming one with the music. I'm transported to some other time and place, somewhere better than here. This is where I belong, in the place where only I and the music exist. Everything feels light, and I let it all flow out from me. My spirits lift, and I'm almost ecstatic. Then the scream of some wild beast pierces the bubble of calm contentment my music has formed around me. When I open my eyes, I realise it's not a wild animal, but Haftar as he picks up an Elia and throws it at me.
Rosenfire, our family holds great weight and power in Orthani, and yet I hear whispers.
Do you think he can take him?
There is no way that this could happen.
No, more books. I can't remain locked in this ivory tower a moment longer.
She's perfect. The Baron's daughter must be found.
Julius, we shouldn't.
Why shouldn't we?
I am not a full dark elf. I do not possess their ethereal beauty. How will I find a mate?
The lowly Baron's son apparently has shown that he has the same gift of fire-wielding as I, if not stronger.
I am the family's dirty little secret. I am not the future of the family. Dukan is.
This world was created from a seed of evil.
I propose we take Dukan out of the picture, permanently.
Please, let me go.
If you want to join the poor humans who are bought and sold in the markets on a daily basis, you will find a way to get there.
I am free, and I am terrified.
You will never escape me.
I can try.
You will fail. Get seasons 1 and 2 of the Dark Elf series from worldsofprotheka.com.
Protheka's magic is eternal. This series will show you why.
Chapter 6. Haftar. After demanding that she play for me, one might think I'd be happy that she did so. After a slightly fumbling start, I listen as she plays. But instead of bringing me the pleasure or inspiration I expected, it's just making me angry. How dare she be better at this than me? I've been practicing my craft longer than she's been alive, and yet this human girl makes the Homer sound more soulful than I could even before the burdens of fame and success dragged me down. I can feel my anger rising up in me, and I want to scream. I've given up so much of my life for this. While I may live comfortably, had I remained with my family instead of pursuing this dream, I could have been living opulently. But I broke away from my family to do this. I've spent decades practicing and learning from the masters of the craft. I've traveled to exotic places to learn the music of different lands. I practiced until my fingers bled. I sang until my voice was a harsh whisper. I've done many things I'm not particularly proud of to get the opportunities I needed to get here. And all those years of my life suddenly feel wasted. Before I even realize it, I'm on my feet and picking up an Ilya. I grasp it by the neck and fling it across the room, narrowly missing her. Not that I was aiming for her. The instrument smashes into shards of wood instantly. Then I pick up a second one and smash it on the ground until I'm left holding the neck with a few strings dangling from it. Staring down at her, I say, "If you ever sully another instrument in my house or anywhere ever again, you will never leave this place alive. You do so, and I will make this." I hold up the broken piece of the instrument in my hand. Seem like a blessing. Do you understand? She cowers in her seat, looking up at me in slack-jawed terror. But while her mouth is open, no sound comes out. Do I need to repeat myself? No. No, what? Do you understand, or do I need to repeat myself? I understand, sir. I won't play again. I promise, she squeaks. Now get out! Go to your room and stay there until I come to get you, I yell. She stands from her chair, lays the hombre down across the seat, and runs out the room, the sound of her terrified sobs echoing through the hallway. I take the useless piece of wood that was once part of a beautiful instrument and fling it across the room. It bounces off the wall and falls to the floor, landing in a haphazard pile that resembles a mess of worms. Pinching the bridge of my nose, I close my eyes and let out a big sigh. I collapse into her recently vacated chair. Where did I go wrong? I loved music all my life, but here I am sitting near the pile of wood that used to be the body of a beautiful instrument. Try as I might, I can't get into the flow of the music, and I'm left feeling hollow. Where have all my passion and drive gone? Was my life's work just a flight of fancy? And now, after years, I'm tapped out. I've written and performed so many songs, played in front of the king. I've played in concert halls where some of the greatest names in music have shown the world their talent. But it's been years since any of it brought me any joy. Applause and fame have grown so tiresome that I feel like everything has lost its meaning. The music I play no longer feels like anything, just senseless noise devoid of all passion. And people still eat it up, which pisses me off even more. Here I am, running myself into the ground for people who barely seem to notice how much my music has suffered over the years. I used to compose dozens of new songs every year, and now nothing. It's the same old tired crap. But this girl, this human who stole her inspiration from me, leeching off my music for years, gets to play like that. I'm sick with rage as I kick over a drum before putting my foot through it and then stomping the frame to pieces. Then it's like the floodgates have opened, and the years of rage I felt at how the music in me died come pouring out in a stream of thoughtless destruction. Over my long years, I've practiced with so many instruments, but it's all so pointless now. I grab a second hombre, leaving the one she played resting in the seat where she put it. Lifting my instrument like a club, I swing it at a glass case containing various flutes I've learned to play. The body cracks, much like the one the stupid human girl dropped and broke, but it still makes easy work of the glass. Flutes go flying across the room, some of the more fragile ones shattering on impact. I stomp the others to pieces or take them and toss them into the fireplace. Then on to the next case, then the next. But try as I might, destroying these things doesn't release the years I put into them. All that time is still wasted. When I finally come back to my senses, the room is a wreck of shattered glass and smashed instruments with just a few remaining untouched, including the hombre she'd played and my first love, my jinrayaha. Breathing heavily, I collapse onto the bench in front of it and open the cover. Extending a finger, I lightly tap just one key, a minor, sorrowful note like a lament for its fallen brethren. But then I press the key a little harder and a little faster each time, creating a din out of my compounding frustration. I raise up both fists, ready to smash the keyboard and be done with this beast that tempted me down this road. If I seek to get the years I spent practicing music back, this would be the one to destroy. I first played it as a boy. It was something we had in the house that seemed to be more for decoration than actual use. I'd only ever seen it played when my parents threw a party, and they hired someone to play it. I thought it sounded so beautiful that I wanted to be able to make it produce the melodies. It was one of the few things I took with me when I left, which was no small feat given its size. This temptress was the reason I was even here in this mess, literal and figurative. But when my fists come down on the keys, there's no force behind them. It just sings out like a stricken animal before fading into silence. I replace the cover over the keys and look around again. I feel the boiling anger start to ebb, but it doesn't go completely away. Now it just lacks the intensity needed to enact this much violence. I stand and walk over the debris left over from the destruction of most of my instruments. A strange laugh bubbles up in me as I realize this is the first time some of these instruments have been out of their cases in years. But I shake it off and head back into my bedroom before continuing out into the hall. I walk past the room where Jennifer is staying, and I can hear her sobbing through the closed door. It doesn't matter. I pick up my cloak and leave the house.
Chapter 7. Jenny. I'm so sorry, I say to my father as he stares down at me, his face grim. This is all your fault. He spits out the words just before the noose tightens around his neck. I snap awake. I must have cried myself to sleep because when I lift my head, it's dark outside. I'm not sure how late it is, but if the hunger in my gut is any indication, it's quite late. I haven't eaten since this morning before following my father to work. The thought of my father stirs up fresh grief, but I'm hungry enough that my foul mood does nothing to deaden my appetite. I need to eat something, but Haftar has either completely forgotten about me or has decided I should just starve. I shuck off my day clothes and grab a nightdress, pulling it on. Maybe, if I can go back to sleep, I can wait out the hunger. But even dressed for bed, sleep refuses to take me. My stomach growling is keeping me awake. I'll have to get up early tomorrow if I'm going to clean the whole mansion by myself, even if I only do so in the most used rooms. Then I think about his music room. First the one right next to me, and then the one off his bedroom. I shudder thinking of his anger and the fear I had when I first thought he was going to take me to his bed. I can feel more anxiety rising and decide I need to do something else. Laying in this bed, staring at the ceiling, is doing nothing to quiet those thoughts. And I'm hungry. I'll have to chance it and sneak into the kitchen. I listen at my door, just to see if I can hear him pacing the halls or something. I've never been here this late. Do the twins guard the house at night? They have to sleep themselves as well at some point. I don't want to run into either of them. I don't know if they suffered any consequences for allowing me in. I push the thought aside and focus on listening. Once I'm satisfied with the length and depth of the silence on its other side, I open the door slowly. Still cautious, I only push it until I can see a sliver of the hall. It looks empty. Sneaking around the house is something that I've grown used to, but I was always doing it during the day. At night, things look different. The statue next to the music room almost makes me scream in surprise when I mistake it for Haftar. I have to wait until my heart isn't thudding so loudly before I continue to walk down the halls. I need to be able to hear anyone approaching. I know where the kitchen is, at least I do in the daylight. But when I make what I think should be my final left turn, and all I see is an empty hallway, I realise I messed up. I retrace my steps until I think I find where I took a wrong turn. Luckily, I guess it right this time and make it to the kitchen. It looks like everyone left in a hurry. I suppose people weren't expecting to be immediately fired, so the cook had left half-cut fruit out on the cutting board. Flies have already gathered around it. It's spoiled, and I'd have to throw it out anyway. I figure that means Haftar won't miss it if I eat it. Showing away the bugs, I grab it and some stale bread and find a corner to sit in. I don't want to be seen. It's not a great hiding place, but it's the best the kitchen offers. I could try to sneak back into my room, but then if it continues to attract bugs, I'll have them buzzing around my room. It isn't the first time that I've eaten food like this. Sometimes, when my family was forced to scavenge through the cast-offs from the dark elves for food, it was much worse than this. At least this was just left on the counter instead of sitting on top of a pile of trash. But I'm sneaking around the kitchen, stealing food like some rat. The thought of it is so degrading, and I can feel the tears coming. I eat my meagre meal as I cry. Then a shadow falls over me, and I look up to see Haftar, eyes red-rimmed and bleary. He smells of wine and spirits. With the way he's swaying slightly, I think he might be drunk. He looks down at me, confusion drawn across his brow as though he can't reconcile the image before him. A girl in a nightdress, crying in the corner, eating stale bread and spoiled fruit, is apparently not a regular part of his world. "Why are you eating like this?" he asks. "I was hungry." "I get that, but why like this?" He gestures widely. I was hungry, but you never came to let me out of my room, and I thought you'd be mad at me, so I took food that was already spoiled." Haftar huffs and turns around. For a moment I think he's rummaging to grab something to throw at me, when instead he tosses me a fresh piece of fruit. "You don't need to eat trash. I won't have it said that Haftar feeds his servants trash. Eat it. I'm going to go shower. When you're done, wash up, and then you're going to come to my study and play music for me again." Once the words to eat it were out of his mouth, I was already taking a bite, so I nearly choked when he ordered me to play music. I quickly chew and swallow so I can reply. "I'd love to, sir, but you said I should never touch an instrument again." "Well, obviously you can if I say so. I don't know if this is some mind game he's playing, but I don't care. I want to play. If I'm stuck here with him, I might as well get the most I can get out of it. If I get to play music, then that's great." "Okay, sir, I will. If I'm not out of the shower yet when you get there, just get ready. Maybe practice. I want to be impressed." After I'm done, I go to my room to wash up and change into a fresh nightdress. The one I had on before had picked up dirt from the kitchen floor. Then I walk to his room. I can hear the shower running, so I just continue into his study and gasp when I open the door. So many of the beautiful instruments are in pieces. He'd broken 2 before ordering me to leave, but I hadn't expected his rampage would continue on after that. Does he expect me to work off these instruments as well? Am I expected to bear the cost of his temper tantrum? Fortunately, the hombre I played before sits on its side on the seat of the chair, right where I left it. I walk around the piles of broken glass to the chair and sit, realising a slim nightdress isn't the best thing to wear while trying to play this instrument. I have to hike up the skirt to be able to get into the proper posture. It leaves a lot more of my thigh exposed than I'd like, and I try to fold the skirt a bit so that I would still be considered decent in mixed company, though I still feel like I'm very much on display. I'm glad he's still in the shower because I have time to get hombre in place without accidentally revealing myself to him. I start to practice starting with one of his songs that I've learned. But even with the hombre in between my legs, I still feel very exposed. I'm just starting to move the hombre so I can get up and go change when the door to the bathroom opens. Chapter 8. Jenny. I quickly move the hombre back in front of me as Haftar opens the door to the bathroom, still glistening from his shower. I hope he didn't see anything. But my stomach does a somersault when I see him with his wet hair matted to his forehead. He smiles, and it makes me wonder if I accidentally exposed myself to him, or if he's just happy to see that I followed his instructions. But the thought of him seeing such intimate parts of me makes my cheeks, and perhaps those other parts, burn. He's wearing a bathrobe, similar to the one he first greeted me in, but this time the material is darker, and he's left the sash only loosely tied, and much more of his chest is exposed. I always thought Haftar was good-looking, but it was more of a purely aesthetic appreciation. Nearly every dark elf is good-looking, but this mix of lighting and circumstances makes him appear devastatingly handsome. I swallow hard as I try and fail to keep my eyes from roaming over his body. A single bead of water drips from his hair and trickles down his chest, drawing my eyes along with it. I watch as the water traces the path between and over his defined muscles before disappearing into the robe, where it finally closes at his waist. As if carried by the momentum, my gaze continues lower. The robe's material is thin enough that I swear I can see the outline of his shaft pressed up against the front, with almost enough detail that I can see the head. If the robe were the same light colour material as what he'd put on this morning, I can imagine how the wetness might manage to make certain spots on the robe more translucent. I suddenly realise I'm living the dream of many of his fans. Well, not in its entirety. The thought causes the blazing heat at my core to burn even brighter. If not for the homre between them, I don't know if I'd be able to resist the urge to squeeze my thighs together. I appreciated his looks before, but it had really just been about his music. Now, this is the first time I've ever had anything resembling sexual thoughts about him. At least pleasant ones. And it's like my mind has decided to make up for lost time as images flood my thoughts of all the ways this could play out. The slightest tug on the sash would be all that was needed for it to fall completely open, and I'm shocked by how much I want to see him exposed, especially considering how things played out before, when I didn't know what his intentions were. I replay the scene from earlier when he was dragging me to his bed, but this time it ends differently. I fight him a lot less, my resistance to being taken by him just for show, because I can't be allowed to want this. He tears my clothes off me, leaving them in tatters on the floor, then tosses me onto the bed. I have plenty of time to roll away, but play at being too shocked to move. He crawls up my body before positioning his hardness between my "Are you going to play or not?" the actual version of him asks, sounding slightly annoyed as he dispels the fantasy version of him that was just about to take me. His voice so abruptly snaps me out of my fantasy that I nearly drop the bow. But I recover and then say, "Sorry. I wanted to make sure you were ready." He lounges on his bed. With where he's positioned, he'd be pressing his hard-on into where my imagined self had been laying. I swallow and shake away the thought before I start drawing the bow across the strings, drawing out the first notes of his song. "Stop," he barks, and my body goes rigid with apprehension. My heart shatters, as I think it was all some cruel joke, that he wanted to get my hopes up just to enjoy smashing them to pieces, perhaps with his fists. I know my songs. Play something else. The fear he was about to become violent is enough to take the edge off my sudden need, and I find it a little easier to concentrate on my playing, though my music still has to wrestle mental real estate away from dirty thoughts about the wicked things he could do to me. If I'm going to impress him with my music, I should try my song again. I just hope that it doesn't end in more smashed instruments. There aren't many left. As I slip deeper and deeper into my song, I think less and less about him having his way with me, and more about the music in me, and how I'm finally living out my most fervent wish, playing for an audience. It might be an audience of one, and he's holding me prisoner, but I'm being allowed to play in front of someone else, and he seems to enjoy it. But I just play the notes on the homre, not singing, or so I think. I soon realise I'm humming along with the song. Ms. Jones. His voice is soft, but still cuts through to my core, and I fear I've done something to upset him. Don't just hum, sing. He's telling me what to do, but his tone is much more gracious. It's still an order, but one given without threat or malice. And so, I sing. I sing from the heart. When I look up, he's watching me intently, so much so that I have to look away, or my voice starts to shake. As much as I dreamed of this, maybe not this exact situation, but the performing in front of someone else, I never anticipated that it would be so nerve-wracking to have someone watch me. I wanted someone to listen to me play an instrument and sing, but I never thought about my audience being there and really watching me as I did it. Maybe it's because all the times I listened to Haftar play his music, he was always on the other side of a wall. I never watched the physical process of him making music. It was like his voice and instrument were some separate manifestations of his being, and now I'm acutely aware of how connected it all was. As I sit there with my legs spread and my instrument, no Haftar's instrument, between my thighs, I start feeling hot all over. Every time I look up, he's just watching me, staring in a way that carries a threat of more, but I'm no longer sure if I'm scared of that threat or not. I ignore the heat creeping up my chest and just have to keep singing and playing. But the longer I do, the more difficult it gets, because even when I'm looking at the floor, or even have my eyes closed, I can still feel him watching me. Is this what stage fright feels like, or is this something else? It feels like much more than just performance jitters, which makes sense since Haftar is in complete control of my fate now. Whether I live or die, it's up to him. As a human, I have no rights. If he wished me dead, he could do so, and there would be no one to stop him. And if he wanted other things, there's no one around for miles. A fact that becomes more and more pressing as I continue to endure the weight of his stare. Why is he watching me so intently? Does he have thoughts about what I'm hiding behind the instrument? And why does that thought make me feel so flush? What's happening to me? I want to know why he's staring so much.
Chapter 9. Haftar. I'm awestruck by how she plays and sings. If I didn't know any better, I'd believe there was some form of magic at work. The glow of her skin and the soft light provided by the fireplace gives her an otherworldly aura. She looks something closer to the celestial than the earthbound. But she is human, and that's the part my mind keeps rejecting. Each time I try to force that fact into making sense, my mind rebels. I've been attempting to reconcile it, but I can't. My soul resists accepting that a human could play this powerfully. I can't take my eyes off of her. I watch her, studying her movements, trying to quantify the things she has that I don't anymore. Every time she looks up and our eyes meet, she immediately looks away or closes her eyes. There's something invigorating in the way she plays. It's part of what set me off before, but this time I don't let the bitterness take hold like it did then. Or at least I try not to. It's especially difficult in light of the fact I haven't felt like this about my own music in so long. But I can't keep reacting so violently against the idea that Jennifer is something special. Perhaps a select few humans do have the skill required to make real music. There must be something more about her that drew me in. It wasn't just that she had the skill to make music. I have skills, years of training and practice. I could play almost any instrument. I knew the history of music from across the world, which artists inspired those that followed them, and how every instrument came to be. But none of that had been any use to me in a long time. As I lay there, listening to her play, I can feel something stirring in me, like that recognizes like. But mine feels diminished somehow. She doesn't just have the skills and knowledge. It isn't just her technique. She has the heart and soul of a musician, and that is what I've been lacking lately. The realization feels like a cold lead weight settling into the pit of my stomach. I tried to figure out where I lost it. I don't think there was a day I could point to and say it bisected my life into two distinct parts, before and after the music died for me. There wasn't some instantaneous loss. It had to be something that was chipped away at bit by bit, until there was nothing left. When did all my passion die? And why is she the one to reignite it? I keep listening to her song, and she sings about wanting to share her music, because music was her escape. As I stare at her, I can feel it rising in me, something long smothered by the endless travel. I came here to escape that, and like a bolt of lightning, the realization comes all at once. Music is her escape, and because of the responsibilities of fame, I've been wanting to escape from the music. I need to change that. I need my passion for creation back, and she has plenty. When her song ends, a sweet smile spreads across her face, and she looks up at me again. "Don't look away," I say, and I can see I said it only just in time. She's straining to keep her eyes on me, but I have to find a way back to that place where music flows like water. She's a wellspring. I can almost see it in her eyes that she's already composing her next piece. I must have her. She must be mine so I can learn to tap into that creative spark again, at least until I can reignite my own. Without breaking eye contact, I slide off my bed. Her body stiffens as I approach. She seemed almost relaxed before when she was just playing, but now I can see lines of tension forming, and her hands start to tremble. "I don't want to hurt you," I say, the words slipping unbidden from my lips, but I find they taste of truth. I don't want to hurt her. I can't risk damaging whatever it is that makes her so unique. But I can see it in her eyes, the warmth fading slightly from disbelief. She chews her lower lip, biting it as if holding back words boiling in her that she wishes to leave unsaid. "What is it, Miss Jones? You don't believe me?" I ask. "Answer honestly, and I promise no harm will come to you for it." She looks at me with an appraising glare, but whatever she sees, there must be enough because she says, "You threatened to whip me." That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. But that was more than an hour ago. What's changed since then? Despite the determined set of her jaw, her voice still shakes. "You've shown me what you can do, for one thing." I move closer and take the hombre by the neck. Her grip tightens on it. "Don't worry. I'm not planning on smashing this one." Again, I feel like I'm being weighed and measured on an instinctual level. But I must come out on top in whatever internal calculations she makes because she releases the instrument. Her hands go instantly to her lap, where she adjusts the bottom of her nightdress, but not before I have a moment to see more than a little of her thigh, and my heart quickens at the sight. Perhaps there's more to my appreciation of her than just her musical gifts. I ignore the embedded revulsion at the idea. I know many dark elves take great pleasure from human bodies, but until this very moment I never understood the appeal. Maybe I was just more discerning in my tastes, and not any human would do. I turn and take great care in placing the hombre on its stand as if trying to prove to her that it shall remain intact. When I turn around, she's standing, letting the nightdress fall back around her ankles. She looks up at me, trying to keep a brave face, but I can tell I still terrify her. I'm not certain if that's a good or bad thing. Perhaps the fear will keep her in line, but I can't have it damaging her spark. I reach down and take her hand in mine. I watch as she shivers from the contact. She tears her eyes away from mine, but then she's just staring at my chest. She slams her eyes shut then, and I think she's losing the battle to not enjoy what she saw. I take a seat and then pull her in close until she's standing between my spread knees. She looks so small, like I could break her so easily. I might have to be very careful with this one. Then I pull her onto my lap and wrap my arms around her, crushing her to my chest. My hands go to her waist, and I can feel her whole body go rigid. I release her slightly, pulling back so I can see her. She manages to hold my gaze this time without me having to utter a single word. Then I gently take her by the chin. "What are you doing?" she asks, but with the way her head has already started to tilt and her lips part, I can tell she knows exactly what I'm doing. Then I kiss her, and the fire that has been burning in me, just under the surface, blazes to new heights. Chapter 10. Haftar. When our lips meet, she remains stiff and rigid, but only for a moment. Then I feel her melt into me. I pull back only slightly, but her lips chase mine. I let our kiss deepen and revel in the way I can feel her body heating as she sits on my thigh. Sorry, Protheka fans, but this portion of the chapter is too spicy for YouTube. Find this and all other unabridged content over at worldsofprotheka.com and use code YouTube30 for all the goods. Now back to our story. Still straining against the urge to give in, I say, "You seem to be enjoying yourself before. How is this any different?" I can see tears forming in the corners of her eyes. "It just is. Please, Haftar. Please don't." I'm so close. Just a small shift of my hips, and I can be inside her, join with her. I feel like I'm about ready to explode. I shove away from her and hang my feet off the edge of the bed. "Fine then. Leave." I try not to sound petulant, but I fear that I fail. My shaft is throbbing to be inside her. She slips off the bed and lets her nightdress fall back to the floor. "Thank you, sir," she says in a quiet voice. "For what? Giving you pleasure or not taking any for myself?" The look of hurt shock on her face feels like a punch to the gut all of a sudden. I turn away, not wanting to see it anymore. Before I can have a chance to falter in my resolve, I hear the door to the hall shutting slowly behind her. My blood set to boil. I stare out the window at the cold moonlight. "Gods below, what am I doing?" I ask the empty room.
Chapter 11. Jenny. I run back toward my room, my entire body tingling. Just feeling the way the silk of the nightdress brushes against my skin makes me shudder. It'd almost be easier to walk without it, and the thought of walking through the mansion naked makes me gasp. Then I can't suppress the image of Haftar finding me like that, chasing me down and pinning me to the wall before he pushes inside me. What is wrong with me? I get to my room and close the door behind me, leaning against it as I try to catch my breath and quell the aching need I feel for more. I liked everything he did to me. A lot. And that scares me. He's an elf. His people are cruel, and they regularly use humans for their pleasure. "Oh no," I say, realizing I may have just used him for mine, and the second he looked like he wanted something in return, I panicked and fled. But he let me. He let me go even though he could have easily pinned me down and taken me. I feel myself somehow getting wetter at the thought. I wanted him. I still want him, and the need burns intensely. But I'm terrified. I've never been with any man, elf, human, or otherwise. The fact that I've made it this long and I'm still a virgin is its own accomplishment, I guess. But I'd always wanted my first time to be for love, and while my body is telling me to go back to Haftar's room and beg him to take me, my heart is telling me something different, and I must listen to my heart. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean my body is going to stop wanting it and wanting it badly. I stand there for a moment before I realise I could do something about it. Or try at least. If I don't do something, I don't know if I'll be able to hold out without crawling back to his bed, hoping he still wants me. I pull the other woman's nightdress off and walk over to the bed. Everything here is still new, and I can't yet think about it as mine. After pulling the covers back and arranging the pillows just so, I lay down and then realise I have no idea what I'm doing. I've never felt a need this intense before. I'd of course felt urges, but they've been more subtle than this. I could just ignore them, and they eventually went away. And it wasn't like the tiny house I shared with my mother, father and brother afforded me much in the way of privacy if I had ever had the burning desire to explore my body. But after Haftar showed me what it can feel like, I need more. I lost count of the pleasure he gave me, but I still burn. Will nothing quench this fire that has taken root between my thighs? I start slow, the way Haftar had. As I recall what he did, I try to mimic it with my hands, replaying the whole scene in my head. Want more? We do too. Let's find out what happens as we head over to worldsofprotheka.com, where your fantasies will be indulged. Use code YouTube30 to access the unabridged content at a great price. Back to our story. As the feelings of pleasure wash over me, I suddenly realize that I called out his name, not just in my fantasy. In my ecstasy, I forgot myself and screamed his name, probably loud enough that if Haftar's still awake, he would have heard me. Oh crap! I curse at the darkness of my room. There isn't much left of the world after the orcs came.
Savage. Brutal. Merciless.
If you're a woman, you're property. Even to other humans.
What happens when an orc stakes his claim on a human woman? Who would dare to stop him?
Me. Chapter 12. Jenny. When my eyes snap open, I pull a wet hand from in between my legs. Even after calling out Haftar's name, the shame wasn't enough to quell the fire, and I fell asleep still trying to coax out more ecstasy. I may have a problem. I didn't know what I was missing before, and while I'm tempted to bring myself to bliss again, if only to avoid the temptation of letting Haftar be the one to do it, I shouldn't dally. Instead, I slide out of bed and get dressed. I'm going to need to get work on cleaning and tending the garden now that the entire mansion and the grounds are my responsibility. So that I can be done before the heat of the day, I start with the gardens outside. I begin my efforts at watering and weeding the flowers, even though my father had always started with the front. But if I'm in front of the house, the twins might see me, and I don't know how they'll react to me now. I don't know if Haftar told them what happened, or if they got in trouble for it, but I don't want to see them angry with me. But the delay just makes it worse. I feel myself going slower as I near the final corner before the front of the house. Once I'm out there, they'll easily be able to see me from the guarded entrance. And the more I delay like this, the further behind I'll be on all the other work I need to get done today. I take a deep breath and round the corner. I can see the front gate now, but not the twins. My stomach drops at the thought I got them fired as well. How could I have been so stupid and selfish that I put more than a dozen people out of work when all I had to do was stay home? Then a shadow falls over me. 2 shadows, in fact. I look up to see the twins walking up behind me. Of course, they'd walk the grounds as well. I tense, waiting for them to berate me, strike me, hit me, run me through with their swords. But instead, they just walk past me, saying nothing. Not even a nod from Anofna. Her sister not saying anything to me isn't out of the ordinary, but Anofna acts as though I'm not even there. It hurts way more than I expected, though I can't blame her. I'd been lying to her for more than half of my life. I finish up with the gardens and yard work before mid-morning, which is good because I can feel the air starting to warm quickly once the sun is peeking out over the trees surrounding the mansion. I head back inside and begin cleaning up there. There's so much to do that I shouldn't waste time, and yet I end up taking useless detours to walk by Haftar's bedroom door. It remains shut, and I can't hear anything inside. I don't know if he's there, if he's sleeping, or if he left early in the morning. I don't want to wake him up. Then my body flushes when I think about a pleasant way I could wake him. What the hell is wrong with me? So he gave me a few sessions. Okay, more than a few, a lot. but that doesn't mean I need to be an empty-headed slut about it. I get back to work until it's nearly midday when my stomach rumbles. Then I realise I'd forgotten breakfast. But I didn't see him in the morning and he hasn't yelled at me, so I hope I'm not in trouble. I head to the kitchen to prepare some lunch. I make up a plate of meats and cheeses with some bread and fruit, something I can set aside for a while in case it turns out that he's gone. After carving everything up, I take the scraps for myself. It's what the servants have always done, though my father usually got left out of that because he worked outside. I don't think it was a malicious thing, just logistics. It was easier for the house servants to snag the leftovers, and they were all hungry. But that thought makes me feel slightly bitter about the whole thing. They didn't think to save him any, ever. It makes me feel less awful about how I got them all fired. And then I instantly feel guilty about it. But at least the guilt combined with the hard work on the unappealing parts of the food has quelled the lust a little. That is until Haftar walks in, wearing just the bathrobe from last night. He has barely cinched it shut, leaving his whole chiselled chest on display. As he walks into the kitchen, the robe opens slightly, just before he takes the next step, offering me just a peek at the shaft my fantasy self had ridden with reckless abandon last night. I feel flush once again, and my body is desperately needy for attention in a few very particular places. When I realise I'm staring, I pull my eyes up to his. From the smile on his face, I'm almost positive he caught me looking. I hadn't realised it was possible to be embarrassed and turned on at the same time. And I kind of hate myself for it, because that seems like a really unfortunate combination. If he knows that I, or at least my body, wants him, that will only encourage him to do more. The way my core suddenly aches tells me my body would very much like that, but I can't do this. Why I can't do this is getting harder and harder to understand. What exactly am I saving myself for? I shake my head, clearing away the errant, lustful thoughts. "Good morning, sir," I say, my eyes downcast as I bring the plate I made for him to the table. I turn back to the counter and gnaw at a grizzled cut of meat, trying to chase from my mind the images of me just freeing his member and riding it right here. I need to concentrate on something else, but I'm having a lot of trouble keeping my eyes off him. Does he know what he's doing to me? Is it something he's put effort into, or does this just come naturally to him? He has to know that he's attractive, and of course he knows that my body was very willing. What would he do if he knew just how much effort it was taking to not give in to lust? I stare out the window and see the twins making their rounds. I latch onto the guilt I feel about lying to them all these years. That's something other than thoughts of letting our boss do whatever he wants to me, and is certainly better than wrestling with the fact that I'm struggling to come up with something I don't want him to do to me. My body throbs with the memory of the way he made me feel last night, and how close I was to just giving in. And my mind goes back to the question, why do I hold out for love? It's a silly, antiquated idea. "Ms. Jones," he says, his voice slightly raised. I realise he must have called my name several times already. I look back at him and struggle once more to pay attention to his eyes, even though staring into them feels almost as intoxicating as watching the firm muscles in his forearms move as he tears open a citrus fruit. 13 damn this man. How can he do this to me? Yes, sir? Join me.
Chapter 13. Haftar. "Sir," Jennifer says, looking puzzled, "I tire of eating alone. Come join me. Leave your dregs over there and come enjoy some decent food with me." I push a chair away from the table with my foot and motion for her to take her seat adjacent to mine. Hesitation still darkens her expression. I sigh and add, "I can make it in order if you'd like, but I'd prefer to just have you share a meal with me because it's fun." She hesitates, but then leaves her spot at the counter and takes the chair catty-corner from me. She reaches for the plate and takes a small bit of cheese, nibbling at it. "You don't have to pretend you're not hungry. You've prepared more than enough for me. I don't want hunger to be a distraction for you." She finally relents and eats like a person who actually enjoys the taste of her food. Watching her work her mouth around a firm-skinned fruit, I feel my pants starting to stir. Last night didn't end exactly as I had hoped, and I want release. I managed fine on my own, sitting outside her door and listening as she got herself off. But I want something where she takes a more active role in my pleasure. I can see the strain on her face as she tries and fails not to look at me. She so obviously wants it, and yet continues to fight it. I can't possibly understand why. It takes effort to remember she's human. No, that's not right. It takes effort to remember that since she's human, she didn't grow up the way dark elves do. We are encouraged to tap into our urges and not hold back. While I don't know all the details, I do know that many humans still cling to odd, far more sexually repressed ways from their home world. But I'm done with games. When she stops eating, I turn my chair to the side and say, "Stand here," pointing to the floor in front of me. She takes tentative steps, keeping her eyes on the floor. "Did you enjoy yourself last night?" I ask. She looks up at me wide-eyed as she stops and starts several sentences. "Just tell me the truth." I try to keep my voice even, but I can tell my annoyance is bleeding through. "I did, sir." "But you don't want to screw?" Her mouth drops open and I have to resist the urge to stick something in it, like my shaft now creating a ridiculous tent in my bathrobes. I can't, sir. Please. I want more. I want to mark her as my own. Claim her. Ruin her. But you were okay with me tonguing your sweet little folds? Her cheeks darken. Just answer the question, Miss Jones. There's no one here that's going to judge you. Did you enjoy yourself last night? Yes. So, is it just the getting screwed part you're not comfortable with? I ask. She nods. Doesn't it seem unfair that you got to come and I did not? She nods again. Oh, this is getting good, friends. Too good for YouTube, unfortunately. Find all the unabridged spicy details over at worldsofprotheka.com. Using code YouTube30 will yield you super savings on super content. Back at it.
Chapter 14. Jenny. Gasping for air, my lips throbbing, I look up at him, and I'm suddenly saddened to see him starting to soften, because right now, I want nothing more than for him to take me. This is bad. I can't let him do this to me. But I want to pleasure him. I want to see him lose control. He almost did for a minute there. I can't believe how much of a thrill it gave me when he called me Jennifer instead of just Ms. Jones. How is it that it felt so much more intimate to have him using my first name? And each time he praised me and called me a good girl, I just got more excited. I take a deep breath and stand. I'm barely on my feet for a second before he pulls me in for a kiss. I push back, trying to stop him because I can still taste him on my lips. It's not my favourite flavour, but the way my body flushed at his praise is worth it. But there's nothing like that for him to get out of it. So I freeze, worried that I've offended him by not swallowing it all and cleaning my face fast enough. But he doesn't seem to care and deepens our kiss once I relent. I can't believe how on fire I am right now. Every nerve ending tingles, and I want to let him take me and use me however he wishes. But that makes me want to run away. Everything about this has me more conflicted than I've ever been in my life. I don't love this man. I enjoy the way he makes my body feel, but I can already sense the shame boiling in me that I'm even allowing this with only the smallest moments of resistance. I have to put a stop to this before my resolve breaks, and I end up having sex with a man I don't love. I can't love. He's a dark elf. His people are brutal and cruel. But my aching core doesn't seem to know that fact or care. It just waits hungrily to be full of every inch of him. When he releases me from our kiss, I try to turn to leave. I have to get out of here before I'm reduced to begging. But Haftar seizes my wrist. The motion is quick, but his grip is light enough to not be painful, while still being firm enough to prevent me from leaving. With his other hand, he sweeps the dishes off the table, and I hear the shattering of ceramic plates. My heart pounds as I start to think he's mad at me. But then I see his eyes, and they aren't burning with rage. There's wanton lust blazing in his stare. He sets me on the table and starts pulling at the waistband of my pants, drawing them down my legs. I make a grab for the hem, but he brushes my hand away. He couldn't have recovered that quickly. What could he possibly be doing? When he sits back in the chair and bends forward, his face aimed between my thighs, I now know exactly what his plans are. We can't, I say. He stops. All I can see is the top of his head, but I can feel his breath on me, made more intense when he says, "Ms. Jones, I want you to think long and hard about this. You tell me to stop one more time, and I'll start to think you're serious about it. So I won't do anything until you tell me you want it." I open my mouth and no sound comes out. I don't know what to say, and it's even harder to form thoughts and feelings into words when his tongue is so close to my folds. I squirm slightly, breathing hard. I have to fight this, don't I? I'm having trouble thinking about why I should. "I want to say yes," I whisper. He sits up and asks, "What was that?" "I want to say yes," I repeat, only slightly louder. "Then just say it." His voice is insistent. "Please don't make me," I beg. I just want him to do it without me having to admit it. He just looks down at me, waiting. I bite my lower lips and raise my hips to him. But instead of licking me, he starts to stand. "No, please don't go." He pauses and just looks at me, waiting. We stare at each other for a long moment. It seems he has all the time in the world, and my need just keeps growing. If I wait too long, he'll recover from his ecstasy, and he could take me finally. I can either give in now or give in later when things go further than my heart wants. "Please, do it," I say under my breath. "What was that? I couldn't hear you." His grin is wicked, and I hate him for it, but I can't deny the effect he's having on my body. Stop right there, readers. Get all of the unabridged, delicious details over at worldsofprotheka.com. Add some super savings to a hot story with code YouTube30. Happy reading.
Chapter 15. Haftar. These two just don't stop, do they? Don't worry, you can find out what they're up to by reading over to worldsofprotheka.com. Use savings code YouTube30 for additional bonus and unabridged content that will get your heart racing. Back to our story. "Ow!" she cries out. Rubbing the red mark on her right cheek, she looks back at me. "What was that for?" "I felt like it," I answer truthfully. "I don't know if I like that," she pouts, holding her pants in one hand, leaving herself half bare before me, making me strain to contain myself. "But you don't know if you hate it either," I say. Her eyes narrow at me, but I can tell her pursed lips are more to fight a smile than they are to express annoyance, and something in that expression causes my heart to lurch. I realize how, in such a short time, she's become very special to me. While I've never moved very slow when it comes to women, none of them ever felt necessary. Yes, I wanted the company of a woman, but it was just a woman. Any mildly attractive and entertaining woman would do. Jennifer is different. It's the reason I'm waiting and the reason it's hard to wait. I get up and leave her to her work and go take a cold shower before I do something I'll regret. In the afternoon, she comes into my room to start cleaning up the broken instruments. Looking over the top of my gin raya at her, I say, "Tonight, we'll eat together again. At least that way I can be sure you won't keep trying to feed yourself scraps." "Yes, sir," she replies without even looking up from her work. I leave it at that and go back to trying to pick out the right notes. She makes a simple dinner and we eat together. I somehow manage to keep my hands off of her. About halfway through our meal, I say, "I want you to play for me again." She finishes her bite, chewing slowly. I'm sure it's a delay tactic, but I just fold my hands in my lap and watch her. She takes a drink and then says, "I don't think I should." "Oh, I know you should. You're going to do it. Not only will you do it because I'm telling you to, but also because you want it. You want to keep playing. You've done so much so far just for the chance to play music. I don't see you turning it down for real. I can stand to have you deny only one true desire a day, and you've already exhausted your allotment for today. Her barely suppressed smile scowl is back. You think you know me so well, don't you? What makes you think I'll just do what you say? There's playfulness there, but I can feel her testing the boundaries of our arrangement. Because I know you like to, and you're curious to see what happens next. Also, you don't want me to have to punish you for defiance. I try to keep my tone light, but still let her know that I'm serious. While I do think she's special, I can't have her thinking she has free reign over the mansion. Her face falls a little, but she quickly turns it into a playful pout. Very well, she says, but I'm not quite done with your study. It's still a mess. I think back to my fantasy of having her splay out naked on a jinrayaha, and know that if things do get messy, it'd be best if it weren't atop my most prized possession. We can use the music room next to your room. I sit and watch her as she cleans up after dinner, and I can see the way she tries not to look at me. But each time I catch her doing it, I start to doubt my resolve. I'm not sure which of us will be the first to break, but I do hope it's her, and that she does it soon. I'm not sure how much more I can take.
From the depths of the darkness of Protheka
Or clawing up from the realms of fantasy.
come the most fearsome beasts you have ever seen.
These monsters are done watching from the shadows.
Now, as they step into the light, something unexpected grips them.
Something even they can't fight off.
Love,
Vampires.
demons,
Dark elves.
gods.
Minotaurs. Creatures of light and dark.
They will protect their mates.
Do whatever needs to be done.
Morally grey heroes who will burn the world to protect the women who love them.
10 audiobooks.
Fall into over 60 hours of fantasy romance.
20 ebooks.
Over 1 million words of these brutes who will protect their women.
Even if they might destroy themselves in the process.
Get the immersive Protheka fantasy romance bundle.
For 80% off, right now, dive into Protheka at a once-in-a-lifetime discount.
The first bundle to offer both ebooks and audiobooks on worldsofprotheka.com. Protheka's magic is eternal, and this romantasy bundle will make it endless. Chapter 16. Jenny. I feel my skin prickle in anticipation every time I see that he's watching me, and I'm having trouble concentrating on cleaning up after dinner. I had trouble concentrating while we were eating since I couldn't and still can't stop picturing us screwing on the kitchen table. I have to stop because I feel myself slipping more and more into being willing to trade lust for love and let Haftar have me in all possible ways. As I finish cleaning up, I realise that it's less the thought of what I'd be giving up, the nebulous virginity I was holding on to for my first real love, and more my fear that once we have sex, I'll never be able to escape him because I won't want to. Haftar is a kind man, in his own way, but he's still a dark elf holding me in indentured servitude. When I finish cleaning up, we head to the music room. As we walk past the bedroom he gave me, I can see him eyeing the door as though thinking about just bringing me there. I'm at a crossroads, because with how he's been looking at me all night, and with everything that's happened, if he asked me, I'd probably say yes. And the 13, damn him. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But he keeps any comments to himself, and we walk into the music room. I see the cracked homri and realise that I dropped it only yesterday. It feels like ages ago. But there's an unmarred one I can still play. He sits down in a comfortable chair, lounging back and looking at me like I'm his next meal. I push the thought away as I take up my position with the homre. And what should I play for you tonight? I ask. How much of my music do you know? He answers my question with a question. All of it. Really? I've been listening to you for 14 years. I know all your songs by heart. I leave it unmentioned that I need to know any song I wish to play by heart because I don't know how to read sheet music. Play me your favourite. I have to think for a moment. I may not love the man, but I love his music, and it's difficult to choose which song. But I think back through everything I've heard him play. So I begin with the first song I ever heard from him. It was so long ago when I heard him play it, but it's stuck with me and has been in my heart every day since. I know every note. I get lost in the music again, letting it sweep over me until I'm cocooned in the sound and can, for a brief moment, not feel his eyes on me. When I finish, I look up to see a strange expression on his face. My anxiety spikes when I think I may have insulted him by playing it wrong. "I'm sorry. Did I mess up?" I finally ask, when I can no longer stand the silence. Haftar shakes his head and seems to return to himself some before saying, "No. You did a wonderful job. I just haven't played that in years." His praise makes me feel warm all over. It was the first song I heard you play, and it stuck with me. Hesitation grips me. Things are very complicated with Haftar, but I want to be able to discuss music honestly, so I push past the embarrassment and say, I sing it to myself all the time, at least once a day. I stop and swallow down the last of my chagrin. It's your music that made me love music. Your music has always been there for me. I don't know how much you understand about what it's like to be human, but life is hard. I can feel my voice start to shake, but I push through it. We barely got by with both my parents working. There weren't a lot of jobs, and my mother, she didn't want me to work for a dark elf master because that was her job, and while she's never said it, I know she's been made to do things she didn't want to do. Things that I want to do with him. I can't imagine what my mother would think. But now isn't the time to worry about that. So we struggled, and I tried to do my best to help, but I needed something to live for, and your music gave me that. I've been sneaking in here for 14 years, and before then, I sat outside the window while my father tended your gardens and listened. The days you were gone were the hardest, which I think is why I started to practice on your instruments. Once I get going, the whole truth comes pouring out. I practiced every single day you were gone because I needed to recreate your songs, or I would be dead. And eventually, I started to write some of my own, and I followed your schedule obsessively, just so I knew when it'd be safe to play anything. In the mornings, everyone is on the other side of the mansion, I guess because they knew you liked to sleep in, and it's just become a habit. So, they'd be gone, and I could have hours to practice and not worry about anyone hearing. As hard as the whole experience was, I can't help but smile, thinking of how things played out. And then you had to spoil it by coming home early from your tour without telling anyone. After getting it all out, it feels like a weight has been lifted from me. I may have inflated his already considerable ego by admitting his music was my entire reason for being, but at least I wasn't holding on to that. I love your music, I say, finally looking back up at him. Anything else I have to say dies in my throat because when I see his face, he has a strange expression I don't understand, and before I can really get to study it, he looks at the floor and doesn't say a word. I don't know if I said something wrong or insulted him somehow. Maybe he realizes I'm just some foolish human girl and he's done with me now. Then he stands, and I cower behind the homri, hoping he'll value it enough to take it from me before he explodes. I don't want to play a part in breaking one of his few surviving instruments. But instead of coming towards me, he turns and walks to the jinraiha. He takes his seat on the bench and folds back the cover on the keys. He taps out the first few notes of the song I just played for him. I never finished it, he says, still not looking at me. I abandoned the song because that was about the time I started getting too busy performing and travelling. I've made other songs since then, but I haven't been as prolific as I once was. The music used to come so easily, but I haven't felt inspired in years. His expression softens, and he turns to me with a smile. Then he nods to me as he taps out the next few bars, and I join him. I'm glad my music could help you through troubling times, because hearing you play was the first time I felt anything like my old self in many years, Jennifer. My heart skips when he uses my first name. The only other time he'd done that, I was on my knees before him. This conversation somehow feels more intimate than that. As we play together, it feels like something has shifted in him. I can sense it through the way he plays. It was something that drained from him so slowly over the years, I didn't notice its absence until it came back. Did I bring him back?
Chapter 17. Haftar. It feels good to get back to this song. It was so surreal to hear Jennifer play, and it's only more so to be playing it along with her. She plays it even more beautifully than she had before, and I can't help but sing along with her. Our voices mix well, and I start to wonder if the song was meant to be a duet this whole time. It feels right. When we reach the end, at least the end of what I already have written, she stops playing, but I continue on, adding a few more notes before it starts to feel muddy. I jot down a few notes before I turn to look at her, and I can see her eyes brimming with tears. "What's wrong?" I ask. "Nothing's wrong," she says, dabbing her eyes with her sleeve. "That was just really beautiful, especially the last bit you just added. I hadn't even realized the song I loved most had more to say than it already had." A smile spreads across her face, and I can't help but smile back. I look into her eyes and see so many possibilities. It's like being born anew. "Yeah, I hope I can make it work," I say. I haven't felt this way in so long. Gods below, I didn't even remember what it's like. It had gotten so bad that I could only feel the absence of it. It's been torture knowing I'd lost something, but not knowing what it really was. I want to finish it. Can I count on my inspiration to stay with me? Jennifer laughs and says, "Okay, I'll be your muse." "My what?" "Muse. Sorry. It's an old Earth thing. Mostly an expression. There was this one civilization. I can't remember which one, but in their mythology, the muses were goddesses that inspired artists." "Are you claiming to be a goddess now?" I say, my voice grave. Her eyes widen in horror. "No, I didn't say that. I did mention it's more of an expression now, right?" I can't stop myself from laughing. "What's so funny?" she asks with a pout. "Well, there may be dark elves out there who would take that as some form of blasphemy. I'm not one of them. But it's perhaps best if we keep the muse talk between us." Muse. It's muse. Muse sounds like you're talking about cows. What are cows? Another Earth thing. An animal. I'm sure if I lived anywhere near farm country, I might know what to compare it to, but I've always lived in the city. "How do you know so much about Earth? The Great Rift was a long time ago." "Remember how I said my parents didn't want me working? I couldn't really go out since our neighborhood is not great. I had nothing else to do but read. If I had an instrument, I would have been playing it." I feel a twist in my gut when I think about her being all alone and without access to music. But that's in the past, and it's no use dwelling on it. She's here now. I push the thoughts of what she left behind away. It's all in the past now. If I have my way, she won't be going back. "You read a lot about Earth mythologies and agriculture, but don't know about Protheka's farm animals?" I ask. "I can only read in a few human languages. Never learned to read the Dark Elf." "Would you like to?" She gives me a skeptical look for a moment as if waiting for me to laugh at the joke. "I'm serious," I assure her. "I'd like that. Later, though. For now, would you like to play something else together?" I ask. "Yes, please," she says. We play more songs together, mostly with her on the homre and me on my jinrayaha. She tries her hand on the ilya and I can see she's good but needs more work. As she's playing, I slip behind her and adjust her position slightly to help her hit a high note. Being close to her like this, I can feel the urge to do more. I want to cast the instruments aside and take her to bed, but as much as I yearn for her, I can't deny her the happiness she has when playing music. It's hard to believe how well we work together. I've mostly played my music alone, but there have been a few times when I collaborated with other artists, though never a human. And none of them have even come close to Jennifer. Each time I look at her, I feel the fire in me burning brighter. It's barely been 2 days of knowing her, and it already feels as though I've known her my whole life. The music connects us in a way that I've never felt with anyone else. We play through many of my songs and some other popular artists, some contemporaries of mine. "What about your music?" I ask. "What about it? Do you want to play it together?" "I suppose I could teach it to you," she says, sounding nonchalant, but I can see the excitement in her eyes. But then her face scrunches up as she tries and fails to stifle a yawn. "Am I boring you?" I ask with a grin, but then it's my turn to try and fail to suppress a yawn. I look out the window and the first rays of sun lighten the sky. "Wow, did we really spend all night playing together?" she asks. "I believe we did, and I didn't smash a single instrument," I say with a grin. "I'm very proud of you." "Why, thank you. I'm the picture of restraint." She laughs until it peters out into a sigh. I hadn't realized how tired I was. Perhaps we should turn in. "I don't know. My boss might be upset with me if I'm not up and cleaning the house this morning. I'm sure I can convince him to let you off the hook." Then she starts giggling. I reach out and take the hombre from her and set it on the stand. Then I offer her my hand to pull her to her feet. "I'd appreciate it. I feel like I can sleep until midday, but I'll try to be up by then so I can make sure he has lunch." "I'm sure you can work it out," I say, realizing I'm still holding her hand. I give a gentle squeeze and then release her. "I really did have fun," she says. "As did I. It's been years since music was fun. I think I could get used to having a moose." She purses her lips. I wonder if she's trying not to yawn again, but there's something else in her look, and I realize she's trying not to laugh. "What's so funny?" I ask. "You said moose again." "Ah," I smile. "I could get used to having a muse. Thank you for this, Jennifer." "You're welcome, sir. You can call me Jenny. All my friends call me Jenny," she says. I smile. "Is that what we are now?" I ask. "Friends?" She tilts her head to the side. "I'm not sure what we are, but given everything we've done..." She bites her lip and blushes. "I think you can call me Jenny." I look down at her, the urge to kiss her rising, but she yawns. Then I can't help but yawn as well. As much as I want her, I fear any performance now would be disappointing. Better stick to the good memories. "Good night, Jenny," I say, testing out the feel of the word on my tongue. It's not unpleasant. The familiarity of it with a human is strange and new, but I feel like it's something I could get used to. "Good night," she says as she closes her door.
Chapter 18. Jenny. I wake up to my stomach growling and my mouth dry. I'm really thirsty. When I sit, I feel a little dizzy and think that I might even be slightly dehydrated. I look out the window and see the sun has travelled past the midpoint. I told Haftar I would try to be up by midday. I hope he understands that I didn't mean to sleep this late. After last night, or this morning, depending on how you look at it, I think I should be okay. We bonded in a way that was much more intimate than anything else we'd done. I'm just glad I didn't sleep the entire day away. I get dressed and head to the kitchen. I should drink some water and then get to work on making lunch for Haftar. I realise I never asked him what he likes to eat. If I'm going to be the one making his meals, that's probably something I should know. I figure that if it's in his kitchen, he's probably not allergic to it, but I'd like to aim slightly higher than not killing him. When I enter, I jump back slightly, shocked to see that he's already there and making something on the stove. The aroma hits me all at once, and my stomach growls loud enough to make him look up from his task. "Oh, good. You're awake. I was wondering how long you were going to sleep," he says, going back to pushing something around in a frying pan. I'm sorry. I should have gotten up earlier. I can finish cooking if you'd like. I offer, even though I have no idea what he's making. It's all right. I do actually know how to cook. I'll say, it smells good. Then I guess you're in luck. I made enough for both of us. I was going to eat and then come wake you if you were still out. I figured if you had your first real day of all-day work and then I kept you up all night, it was probably best to give you a day to recover. Well, there's still some day left, I say. I can get something done before dark. Yeah, some day left today. We'll just call yesterday a vacation. What do you mean? I worked yesterday. Number you slept. I look at him for a moment. I understand the words he's saying individually, but collectively he's not making any sense. But I took care of the garden and the dusting, and then lunch. I pause. The memory of what we did on the kitchen table for dessert causes me to flush warm. And cleaned up and made dinner. That was the day before yesterday. It still takes me a second to realise what he's saying. I slept all day. Oh no, I'm so sorry, sir, I didn't... Jenny, it's all right. I'm not mad. You did a lot on your first day, and I was the one who insisted you play music for me and kept you up all night. Thank you, sir. He picks up the frying pan and walks it over to the table, where I realise he'd already set out 2 plates. After putting what looks like a fillet of fish in some kind of sauce with some vegetables on my plate, he serves himself and returns the pan to the stove. As he's walking back, he says, "And if I'm calling you Jenny, you don't have to keep addressing me as sir. At least not when we're alone together." I'd like that, Haftar, I say, before taking the first bite. Oh wow, this is amazing. I don't know if it's because I haven't eaten in more than a day, or because Haftar can really cook, but it's delicious. After quickly eating about half my meal, I slow down and drink a bunch of water. The fish is a little bit spicy. I'm glad you enjoy it, he says, grinning at me. You're different from the others, I say, the thought spilling out of my mouth before I can rein it in. What do you mean? I don't think many dark elves would cook for a human. I could be the first in history. He laughs. I'm sure someone has done it before. Maybe. But it's more than just this. You don't seem to delight in tormenting humans on a whim. I don't mention him firing everyone. As awful as it was, I feel like it doesn't count. He was angry then. It feels like I'm making excuses for him, but I can't help it. I'm really starting to like him. There's just a lot of casual cruelty for the sadistic fun of it that happens. I continue. But that's never been you. What sets you apart? He just shrugs, but I see a sad smile on his face before he changes the subject. We just eat and talk. Do you have any siblings? He asks. Yes, I have one younger brother, John. He'll be turning 16 this year. What about you? I have a sister, younger than me, but only by about a year. There's something painful about his expression, a hurt he tries and fails to hide, but I think it's best if I let him believe I didn't notice. I want to ask, but hold my tongue. I want him to want to tell me. John likes to pretend he's the older brother, acting like he has to protect me. Granted, he has come to my rescue a few times. Rescue? From what? I start to wish I hadn't said anything. Oh, just things. I think I might have mentioned our neighbourhood isn't great. There have been some unwanted advances, and people have tried to steal from us. Stuff like that. A different sort of sadness washes over him. It's not great, but it is what it is. I've gotten used to it, I say, trying to reassure him for some reason, even when it seems like it should be the other way around. You shouldn't have to get used to it. What can really be changed? Like I said, there aren't that many dark elves out there who don't delight in torturing humans, and it all rolls downhill. I think because of the way dark elves treat humans, like we don't matter, It makes it easier for humans to justify treating other humans the same way. But you don't think that, he says. Yeah, but I have good parents. They don't believe in passing cruelty on. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, I say. You didn't bring the humans here. You didn't decide that we were second class. I was going to say second-class citizens, but then I remember the Dark Elves have a chaste system. There are several rungs above the humans that were the second-class citizens. You didn't decide it should be acceptable to treat humans like they're disposable. I just wish I could have helped you sooner. But you did. Your music made it bearable. Without it, I wouldn't be here. And not just because I was sneaking into your music room. I would have given up if I didn't have your music to carry with me. I fought to stay alive, and your music gave me strength. I feel like the conversation has gone really dark, and I can see it weighing on him. It hurts my heart for reasons I don't have the time to examine. I need to segue this conversation somewhere else. You said last night you'd stopped working on my favourite song, but do you have any songs you're working on now? The thought of being the first to hear one of his songs suddenly brightens everything for me. Can I hear some? Then his already stormy expression darkens further. Oh no, what have I done?
Chapter 19. Haftar. There's something in the way Jenny talks about my music helping her that warms parts of my heart that I hadn't realized had grown so cold. If I can help a woman like her get through some really tough times, then it means it was worth it. Before meeting Jenny, when I returned home, I was on the verge of packing it in and just giving up. The bullcrap that came with success drained me, and to even start my career, I had to give up a lot. The thought stings, and I must have made a face or something because Jenny reaches her hand across the table and takes mine. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring you down with all my talk of home or start making demands of you, she says, as she squeezes my hand. I let out a long sigh as I return the squeeze. No, it's not that, and you shouldn't apologize for something the world has done to you. It just got me thinking about... I let out a long sigh. Your family supports each other, and it sounds like you love them. Jenny nods. Things with my family are complicated at best. I was kicked out because I wanted to be a musician. But you're Chivduyu? Were you meant to do something else? I let out a breath. I've lied to everyone for a long time, but I don't want to lie to her. Still, I can't tell her the whole truth. Not yet, at least. It's complicated. My father thought, of all the forms of art, music was the most frivolous. He gave me a choice. My music or my family. The bastard thought it would be a hard choice. He is a cruel, petty, manipulative man, and leaving was perhaps the best thing I could have done. But it still hurts. Don't, I interrupt her. Don't say you're sorry for me. I can't stand pity, which is why I never talk about it. With anyone. I'm glad you felt like you could tell me, she says with a bit of a half smile that lifts my spirits, but also feels like a punch to the gut. Her smiles are dangerous because I'm beginning to realize the things I would do to see them. What about your sister? She asks. I'm sure my father forbade her to speak to me. He couldn't stand the idea of not being in complete control. I think he holds out hope that I'll give up and come crawling back to him and admit it was all a mistake. Do you regret it? I was prepared for questions, but I thought she might try to get more details about my family or something. I expected curiosity about what sort of artisans my family are. I was thinking up possible answers to those sorts of questions, so when she asks me that, my mind can't make it make sense. I'm sorry, what? Do you regret choosing music? I lean back in my chair and look at her. I do, sometimes. Or I did, at least. When it felt like my music had abandoned me, it seemed like I'd given up all this. Connection to other people, friends and family, for nothing. I sacrificed years of my life to the study and practice of music, and sure, it paid off. I needed the success to survive without my family's support, but then all the responsibilities that came with it killed the music. What do you mean? It's complicated, I say. I sort of lost my spark a while ago. Your favorite song of mine, it was the beginning of the end when I gave up on it. I had all this passion for it, but things got so complicated. It's like my music abandoned me. That can't be, though. It must still be in you. What about last night? She asks. You mean the night before? I remind her. She laughs. Yes, the night we played together. I had my moves, I say, smiling at her as I intentionally mispronounce it this time. I appreciate the credit, but I don't think it's warranted. Even if I helped remind you of it or bring it out of you or whatever, it's still been in you this whole time. Maybe you just have been working too hard. I nod. It's true. I'd already been considering that. I've been on the move so constantly that it was draining. But there's something about having someone else say it, having her say it, that makes it seem real. If she sees it, then maybe it's not some excuse I've made up to justify the laziness my father always accused me of. I think what really killed it was all the things about being a musician that weren't the music, if that makes sense. Like what? She asks. Oh, the travel and planning and promotion. All the things I needed to do to make a living doing this. And then, when I started becoming successful, there were all these expectations. You play for some rich noble, they want to be your patron, and that's great. But then there are those who want more from you than just your music. I look at her and she raises an eyebrow, giving me a confused expression. Listen, it sounds like small complaints compared to what you and your family have gone through. I'm almost embarrassed to admit it. I want to know, she says, and her sincerity shines through. I think she's actually interested in hearing what I have to say. I'd find it hard to believe if anyone else said it, or that their desire to know what I meant would be because of the potential for gossip. But her interest seems genuine and not motivated by some hidden agenda. It's like she actually cares. Maybe. I can't tell. It's been so long since I met someone who made me think they actually cared, so the feeling is hard to gauge. Okay, but you have to understand. Saying that a beautiful noblewoman expects you to bed, her just doesn't sound like the struggle it did before hearing what your life was like, or things I've demanded of you. That thought twists in my gut. Even as much as she seems to have enjoyed herself, I start to wonder how much I appeared to enjoy myself. Just hollow sex wasn't what I wanted. It was fun enough, I guess, but... You wish you'd loved them? She says, a half-knowing smile playing across her lips. Wow. You see, that's sort of why I didn't want to say anything. I'm sorry. It really doesn't compare to your life. We all have our struggles, Haftar. If it's all we know, it can still feel really tough. And didn't you say you shouldn't have to apologize for the things life does to you? Using my own words against me, I see. Well, at least you know I'm listening and not just smiling and nodding. Thank you for that. And I pause and look down at our joined hands. And thank you for showing me that I still have some creativity left in me. It was worth leaving my father behind and the other sacrifices I had to make, especially if it meant putting music out there that helped you. I'm sure your music has helped plenty of people. Perhaps. But plenty of people aren't Jenny. They're abstractions, and Jenny is here, and she's real. And I look at her lips, and I fight back the urge to kiss her. Especially after everything we talked about, it seems crass to try to take her to my bed again, despite how much I'd like to.
Chapter 20. Jenny. I look at our joined hands. I see the way he's looking at me, even though I can tell he's trying to hide it, and I feel that burn start low in my belly. Giving his hand one final squeeze, I pull mine away. I have to appreciate that even though I can see he wants a repeat performance, he's keeping that to himself. Despite the things we've already done, it's like he finally realizes what I meant about wanting to do something like sex out of love. But that doesn't mean my body isn't insisting that waiting is a stupid plan, and trying to tell me it'd be better to just give in and let him pleasure me. I'm sure he'd take good care of me, give me everything I want, but I need more than just relief, even if it's starting to feel like something more. I should get to work on cleaning things up. I don't want to get even more behind on housework. Haftar's face fell a little. Oh, right, yeah, I suppose I should let you catch up on that. Did you forget why I'm here? I ask. I enjoy talking with you, he admits. I've gotten so used to being alone I forgot what it's like to just be with someone. You could keep me company, but... I level my gaze at him. You have to let me work. If you recall, I'm the only one cleaning up here. Okay, he says as he sits back. I start cleaning up from the lunch he made. So, when did you learn how to cook? I ask. After my family kicked me out. I was on my own for a while. I had to figure out how to take care of myself. As I started to be able to support myself more and more and there was money to spare, I learned how to make more dishes because I needed some variety. When I start wiping out the cast iron pan he used, he says, "Oh, I usually let that soak for a bit." You what? I soak the pan. I blink at him a few more times. You soaked your cast iron pans? He suddenly looks concerned and self-conscious. Yeah, he admits, embarrassment creeping into his voice. Before your parents kicked you out, were they successful enough to have other people doing housework stuff? Oh, yeah. I nod. I guess if he went from having servants to doing things on his own all at once, he never had time to learn certain things. Okay, lesson 1. You don't soak cast iron. You season them right, and they should clean up easily. Have you already soaked this one since you fired everyone else? No. I breathe a sigh of relief. I wasn't going to have to rehabilitate the cast iron. When I finish up in the kitchen, I move out into the other rooms and start dusting. After a while of standing beside me, Haftar says, "This is sort of boring." Cleaning usually is, and I'm going as fast as I can. He picks up a rag and starts dusting. Oh, you're going to help? I did live on my own for a while and didn't want to live in squalor. I can clean up after myself, he says. Then as he dusts the vase on the mantelpiece, it topples over and shatters on the ground. Okay. So it was many years ago that I was cleaning up after myself. I try not to laugh, but I can't help it. Let me get a broom to sweep this up. We don't want shards of glass on the floor. When I come back, he's moved on to dusting things like the furniture, and he's taking things off the shelves before he starts trying to dust them. Well, at least he's capable of learning and changing. Once we're past the hottest part of the afternoon, we head out into the garden for weeding. My father had just planted some new flowers, and if I don't keep on top of that, the weeds will choke them out. When I finish a little patch, I turn to see that Haftar has pulled out all the weeds as well as the new growing plants. He must see something in the look on my face because he says, "Okay, what did I do?" "Not all of those are weeds," I say, pointing to the pile of uprooted plants. "Oh, I did think it was weird there weren't flowers here." He laughs. "I thought maybe you were preparing it or something. Sorry. I mean, it's your garden. I'll have to see if my father I have to swallow down the urge to cry, thinking about how this all started with him getting fired. I don't know what to do with these emotions. I'm strangely happy here with Haftar, but I know things are going to be rough back home. I'll have to see what seeds were left behind and if there's enough growing time to patch the hole. Otherwise, you might have to live with an empty spot until next season. "It'll be okay," he says and then asks, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," I lie. I don't know what to do about my family. While Haftar seems sympathetic, I don't know if he's feeling generous enough to hire anyone back. I end up having to teach him how to water the plants without drowning them. When we're done, we sit on the front steps of the mansion. The twins start their rounds, and soon it's just Haftar and me. "Okay, be honest with me. Did I make your job harder today?" he asks. I laugh. Maybe a little. But even with the shattered vase, it was quicker dusting with 2 people. And you did the weeding really fast. I smirk at him. Well, it helps if you just don't care what you're tearing out of the ground. It's nice to know that Haftar doesn't take himself too seriously. Our meeting wasn't the best, and the path we took to get here was weird, but I guess it's how it had to be for it to play out like this. Whenever things worked out in this unexpected fashion, and it didn't make a lot of sense, my grandmother would always say, "The Lord works in mysterious ways." She was referencing the God of the earth. She clung to the old ways, still praying to him, a God from above who was supposed to exist to help people. On Protheka, the gods dwelled below the ground, and while they granted powers to many, didn't seem as benevolent. So while I doubt the 13 hungry Moors would have set me on this path, perhaps the God of Earth might still be looking out for his wayward people. We head inside, and after a shower and a simple dinner, I tell Haftar I'm exhausted. Unfortunately, as soon as I lay my head down, I realise I'm not going to be able to sleep. While I'm tired, my mind is very busy. I should be madder with Haftar than I am. He did fire my father after all and hasn't seemed to care, even after I told him things were hard for my family. But maybe his own experiences with his family colours how he thinks everyone feels about theirs. While my father never explicitly made me choose between music and my family, I wonder if I could have made a choice like Haftar did. He makes everything very confusing, and it's frustrating, occasionally sexually frustrating. As tired as I am, I think maybe a little release will help me sleep. I slip into the fantasy of being with Haftar again. I prepare the mental space, building a world in which we love each other so that my fantasy self can give into desire without guilt. I find it surprisingly easy to play pretend. My fingers circling my clit, imagining Haftar about to plunge his shaft into me, I whisper, "I love you," and then stop once I realise the words taste true. "Oh man," I say to the empty air. I can't be in love with a dark elf, can I?
Chapter 21. Haftar. When I wake up, I'm sore. I haven't worked with my hands like that in a long time, and my body is reminding me of muscles that are apparently only used while cleaning the house and pulling weeds. I do feel sort of stupid about tearing up the garden while weeding. Jenny's father had done so much work putting that together. I feel a stab of guilt, not just for destroying his work, but for taking his livelihood away. It was a stupid and impulsive decision born out of anger. And while I can feel my mind trying to twist it around to say that it was because Jenny had violated my sacred space, given how everything has turned out, her sneaking around was the best possible thing. Hopping out of bed, I quickly get dressed and knock on Jenny's door. She opens the door and she looks barely awake. "Did you sleep okay?" "Not really," she says. "Did I wake you?" Rubbing her eyes, she says, "Sort of. I'm sorry. This could have waited." She stares up at me, brushing a tousled strand of hair out of her face. Looking at her, still in her rumpled nightclothes, I can't help but focus on the way the silk hugs her curves and the way her hard peaks tent the fabric. Suddenly, all I can think about is pushing her back into her bed and joining her there. "What could have waited?" she asks, face darkening when she catches me staring at her chest. "Oh, I wanted to go into town." She blinks at me several times and then furrows her brow. "What? Why?" "Nothing, really. I just think it's time I saw it for myself." "You've been in town before, haven't you? The only way to get to the road up here is through town. Riding through a town in a carriage with the curtains drawn isn't seeing the town." She hesitates for a second and then asks, "And you'll be okay with stuff not getting down around the house?" "It'll be fine. No worries." "Okay, but I'm going to need time to actually work off what I owe to repair the instrument I broke." "Of course," I reply, having completely forgotten about it. That's how meaningless the instrument was, but that's a discussion for later. "Let me get dressed," she says. "Oh, and try not to dress like you." She raises an eyebrow at me. "I don't want to be recognized going into town." "That shouldn't be a problem. These aren't my clothes anyway." "Oh, right. I forgot. It just feels like you've been here forever. I'll be right out, she says. Just before the door closes, I see her pulling the nightdress over her head. I don't know if she meant to do that, but I feel like I should warn her she's playing with fire. I take a seat in the living room and wait for her. After about 10 minutes, she emerges dressed and much more put together. On the way out, I hand her a cloak and take one out myself. The morning is still cool enough that wearing a cloak is comfortable and not out of the ordinary. Plus, the dark clouds in the sky hint at rain. It's a short walk from my home to the town proper, with the woods providing me the cover and seclusion I need. As we near the town, it starts to rain, but the cloaks do an admirable job. Before we clear the tree line and can be seen from town, I stop and take a deep breath. Is everything okay? Jenny asks. Yeah, just getting disguised. Most dark elves know at least a little magic. It's in our blood, but I never had the patience to really practice it. I didn't see a reason. Now I wish I had. While I can alter my appearance slightly, I'm still recognizable as a dark elf, just not as myself. It's all minor adjustments, making my skin a little darker, my nose broader, and my lips thinner. How do I look? I ask. Different. I wouldn't recognize you. When we get into town, I can already feel myself sweating a little, trying to maintain the illusion. I haven't done much magic in a long time, but it's not like I'm the only dark elf in here. While this part of town is almost exclusively human, dark elves have reason to come here. I can even see some well-dressed dark elves opening carriage doors to invite humans in. I shudder slightly, knowing well what may become of those who accept kindness from my people. Those not looking to become servants or concubines of dark elves do their best to ignore us and avoid getting noticed. I look around, and for the first time, I'm really seeing how humans are treated. Before, I knew it wasn't great, but I was never really around humans like this. They were beneath my notice, which I guess is better than taking a keen sadistic interest. But what I see now is how that dispassionate view lets me ignore a lot of suffering. Homes are constructed out of cast-off materials from the dark elves that have homes in the surrounding area, or whatever else can be gathered. Many of them don't look like they're able to do much about the rain with open, cracked roofs. Jenny must have seen me staring. It is what it is. Humans have to be resourceful and use whatever we can find. Yeah, I guess, I say. Is something wrong? She asks. There's so much wrong, but too much of it for me to put into words. I've seen dark elves raise an entire city out of the ground with enough magic. It would take almost nothing for a mildly powerful sorcerer to flick their wrist and fix this. I just never realized it was this bad, I answer. I guess that's what I get for cutting myself off from the world. If you had been engaged in the world before, maybe you'd have ended up like almost any other dark elf, and you wouldn't care that things look bad. I suppose that's one way of looking at it. How can you manage to see the good here? I have to, Jenny says. Imagine this, plus hopelessness. It's part of why music, your music, is so important to me. But it's really not all doom and gloom. She looks out over the town before adding, just mostly. But I can see the grin she's suppressing. So what isn't doom and gloom here? I ask. Jenny starts pointing out where some people she knows live, people who helped her and her family in times of need, or which houses were considered a safe place for children to go, places watched over by vigilant and strong humans. I'm not saying that the struggle is noble, and therefore good enough to make up for the bad, just that it's not all helpless humans at the mercy of dark elves. She lets out a long sigh. What's wrong? Without even turning to look at me, Jenny keeps walking as she says, Oh, nothing. It's just that I know from experience it's also not just the dark elves making things hard out here. We use and abuse each other plenty. But not your family? She jerks her head to me. No. Not my family. We try our best to make it work without thinking we need to stomp all over someone else to get there. I'd like to meet them, I say. I know I've already met her father, but I've spent little time getting to know him. I barely remember his name. I'm sorry. What? Can you take me to where your family lives? I ask, hoping I'm not making a terrible mistake.
Chapter 22. Jenny. I want to see my family, but what I don't want is to bring a dark elf with me when I do, though I'm not sure if it'd be better or worse if it's a dark elf I've fallen in love with, the same dark elf who fired my father. Are you sure? I ask. I want to tell him that he just fired my father and sort of kidnapped his daughter, and that maybe he wouldn't be in the mood for a visit. But what else can I do? Despite these feelings I have, he still pretty much owns me, which makes this all so much more complicated. Why did my stupid heart and body have to get all stirred up by a dark elf? Things would be so much easier if I'd fallen for someone else sooner. Yes, he says. I'd like to see your family. Okay, follow me. I walk the winding streets towards home, trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to say to my father. I should apologise at least for getting him fired, but that would be easier to do without the guy that fired him standing right there. Listen, when we get there, I'd like to go in first, just to let my family know. I stop dead in my tracks as we come around the corner to see part of the house collapsed. I break into a run. When we get close, I can hear shouting. Several people are standing in a ring around my father and brother. John has his fists raised, and my father looks like he's been beaten. One guy rushes John. I don't know what comes over me, but with no memory of running the distance between, I'm on the man's back, trying to pull him away from John. He throws me off of him, and I hit the ground hard. When I look up, I'm shocked to see I recognise his face. It's the cook from Haftar's house. He seems just as shocked to see me. Well, look at what we have here, he says, recovering quicker than me. The little bitch that got us all fired. I'm going to... But he doesn't get a chance to finish his sentence, as a large, dark-skinned fist connects with the side of his face. Then Haftar offers his hand to me, while still wearing the false face he summoned using magic. I can barely breathe, but I manage to choke out, "Forget about me. Protect my family." His hand shoots out, and he pulls me to my feet. For a second, I think he's going to completely ignore me, but then he leaps over a broken section of the wall that used to be part of the kitchen. A woman with a large piece of wood, something that might have at one point been holding our roof up, raises it above her head and is about to smash my father's skull in with it. But then Haftar blocks the blow with his arm and uses his open palm to shove her back away from my father. "Leave now, or die," the dark elf says. She chooses the former, dropping the piece of wood and fleeing north. Then Haftar turns his attention to a couple of guys harassing John. I can see John's eyes go wide as Haftar charges in, as though he suspects the musician is there to hurt him too, but his face flashes into shocked relief when the dark elf grabs the two men by the sides of their heads and bashes them together. I see a few more familiar faces in the circle of people. Each of them is someone who used to work in the mansion or their family. A look passes between them as they assess whether or not they're angry enough about being fired to try to take on a dark elf. Haftar says, "Before anyone thinks to try and harm any member of the Jones family, you should understand that doing so means your life and the life of your family is forfeited. If you believe you've been wronged here, then it will be by me." Haftar drops the illusion, and I can tell exactly who among them hadn't already figured out who he was by the scattered, astonished gasps. "Do you still think that violence and vengeance are your best course of action?" There may have been some among those remaining who would answer the question aye, but not enough of them that the eyes had the numbers required to even contemplate such a move. They turn and leave, each choosing their own pace. I limp over and help my father to his feet. He looks at me, and I think it takes him a moment to process that it's me. "Jenny? Jenny!" He hugs me tighter until we both wince. "What are you doing here? How did you—" Dad stops mid-sentence and just stares behind me. I turn to see Haftar standing behind me. "Mr. Jones," he says. Dad's jaw tightens. "What do you want? Are you releasing my daughter?" "I've come to apologise and give you your job back. Your son too, if he'd like." I can't tell who is more surprised, my father or me. Haftar takes our stunned silence as the opportunity to explain. I acted rashly before, putting you and your family in danger. I see that now, and while I wish I could take it all back, I can't. But what I can do is attempt to make amends. To start, you're going to... I would like you to stay at the mansion, and we can discuss you returning to work after you've had some time to recover from your injuries. All my father can manage to do is nod. Haftar looks around us. A small crowd has gathered, drawn by the spectacle, but they're keeping their distance, not wanting to cross a dark elf. "Where is your wife?" he asks. "She works for Lord Morrick Coldray," Dad replies. The look of disgust that passes over Haftar's face tells me he at least knows Coldray by reputation. "Wait here," Haftar says before turning and walking into the crowd, who start to scatter. But he calls for one man, large and rough-looking. After a brief conversation, I see Haftar pass him several coins. "Boris has agreed to watch over you until I return," Haftar explains. "Gather your things." Then he turns to leave again. I grab his wrist, stopping him. "Where are you going?" "To retrieve your mother," he says in a matter-of-fact tone. The tears I've been holding back begin to pour out of me. Haftar drops to one knee and puts his hand on my shoulder. "Jenny, I'd prefer to embrace you right now, to comfort you, but there are too many eyes, and I don't want to bring your family any more trouble. Just pack up. I'll be back soon." "Thank you," I say. "I'm just fixing my mistake. Not many dark elves would do this. I've always been a bit of a rebel." With that, he turns to leave. I go help my brother and father pack up our things as Boris stands watch, making sure no one thinks to try and come back for revenge with my family's dark elf patron gone. As we gather some of Mum's clothes, Dad turns to me and says, "Jenny, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but I worry. I saw how you look at him." "Dad, can we not do this right now?" "Honey, he's a dark elf." "Who's giving us a place to stay and work?" "At what cost? I know what the bastards do with young women. This isn't a conversation I want to be having with my father. I haven't been made to do anything I don't want to. Can you just accept this as a blessing?" He stops and looks up as Haftar walks in with my mother. She runs up to him, looking at his injuries. "What happened?" she asks. Dad looks from me to Haftar and back to her. I'm still trying to figure it all out, but perhaps we should save that discussion for when we have an actual roof over our heads. Chapter 23. Jenny. It's dark as we approach Haftar's home. Behind us, John is whispering to our parents, and I know he's shocked at the mansion before us. He has likely never seen anything like it. My heart twists the closer we grow to the mansion, and I'm not sure how to feel. I've missed my family terribly, and I'm glad to know that they are no longer in harm's way, but it feels weird to have them here. Haftar shouldn't be providing for a group of humans, even if they are his servants. I know he'll be kind to them, but I don't want to put him out by doing so much for us. There's the matter of my feelings for him too. How will my family act if they notice? How would Haftar act if he found out? Would we be thrown out onto the streets? Will he be repulsed? I'm not sure what to think, and I try to quieten my thoughts as we enter the foyer. My brother's voice carries in the high ceiling area, and his wow isn't lost on any of us. Haftar has been unusually quiet and distant towards me, and as I pause in the entrance, uncertain of what to do, he brushes past me without looking in my direction. "Take care of their wounds," is all he says to me before he flees upstairs. I sigh, turning back to look at my family. My dad's eyes roam over my face, searching for something that I do not know. I ignore it and give them a smile, though I'm sure it is tight from all the tension I feel in my body. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." I lead them through the first floor to where the infirmary is. It's for the servants mainly, serving as their dining area as well. It's a small room, but the cabinets are stocked well. I help John up onto the table while my dad pulls out a chair. I place cloths, antiseptics and ointments onto the table, feeling guilty as I know that Haftar supplies them for in-house injuries. It is a kind thing for him to do in the first place, and I feel like I'm abusing their availability. You were out with him today. Dad starts, wincing as Mom assesses him, and I try to ignore him as I clean John up. He needs a shower too, but he can handle that himself. Has he been treating you well? The events of my stay flash through my mind, especially those pleasurable times where I learned more about my body than I ever have. My face flushes red, and I duck my head, though my voice is still uneven as I mutter, "Yes." He seems nice, John whispers. Not just nice for an elf, but actually nice. Is he always like that? Again, I nod. Yes. Why? Before I can answer, Haftar clears his throat, and I whip around to see him standing in the doorway. My whole body heats up, and I wonder just how much he heard. His face gives away nothing as he tells them, "I've prepared one of the guest rooms upstairs. They will be your new quarters while you are working here. Jenny can show you where they are." My father rises from his chair, his head bowed. "Sir, I know where they are. Thank you so much for your kindness, and we will work hard to repay you for it." Haftar's eyes soften a little, and he takes a step forward. "It's nothing more than common decency. Something I understand a little more because of your daughter." My father lifts his head slowly, clearly in awe. "Please, show your son and wife their new room. You're free to use anything up there." John jumps down from the table, wincing slightly, but it doesn't slow him. He takes our father's hand, tugging at him. "Let's go upstairs." Mum follows them both, curtsying to Haftar. I stare at Haftar as they leave, shaking my head. "You shouldn't be doing this. Stopping those men, giving them medicine. That was more than enough. Letting them stay here is too much." He takes a step forward, and I feel as if I can no longer breathe. "It's not too much. I'll do whatever I can for you." My heart thunders as he reaches for me, but he seems to think better of it, shaking his head slightly. He drops his arm by his side, his face returning to a neutral position again. "I think it's best if we get some sleep. It's been a long day for us both." I nod, watching as he backs out of the room. I can't control my heart as it twists and pounds. His words are echoing through my ears, touching my heart as I think them over. They also confuse me. I try to dissect them as I go upstairs and dress for bed, so absorbed in my mind that I don't notice what my hands are doing. I can't help wondering if I am reading too much into Haftar's words, but he seemed so sincere when he said them. Surely I am not misunderstanding this situation. If he meant what he said, then maybe it is not foolish to hope that he can return my feelings. Is that what is happening? Was he trying to tell me? The words antagonize me for hours as I toss in my bed, wondering what if 1,000 times over. By the time the clocks strike midnight, I'm more awake and restless than when I first crawled into bed. Desperate to clear my head, I throw the blankets back and decide to go for a walk. As soon as I step outside of my room, though, I hear the soft sounds of the jinrayahar playing through the hall, and I know it's coming from the music room nearby. I walk in that direction, pausing in the doorway. He didn't bother to turn any lights on, letting the moon illuminate the room. I'm not even sure if he needs to see with how well he plays from his heart. I'm forced to face the truth as I listen to him play, watching the way the light dances over his profile. I've already fallen so hard for that, even if there was no chance of Haftar returning my feelings. I'm too far gone. He has claimed my soul and heart, and I don't think he even knows it. Pushing off the wall, I decide to walk farther into the room. I don't think I can handle being alone with my thoughts anymore, and I enjoy sharing music with him. He hears my footsteps as I didn't try to mask them, and he turns to see me approaching. His expression is unreadable as he takes me in, but he reaches out toward me. I take his hand, and he pulls me toward him, his head tipped back to stare up at me. Sit with me. Though he doesn't phrase it as a question, I know it is one, so I nod. He slides over and I take the seat next to him, watching as he lines his fingers back up on the ivory keys. The song starts off, and immediately I recognize it. It is the one that I first fell in love with, the one that drew me to him, but as he approaches where I think there is an ending, it glides onward. It's a gorgeous melody that keeps going, his voice filling the room beautifully. Tears prick at my eyes as I realise that he finished it. He thought he was losing his music, but here he is, singing a new creation after I poured out how much I love this song. Maybe I'm foolish, but it feels like this music is dedicated to me. I don't realise how freely my tears have started to flow until the song ends and Haftar turns toward me. My soul aches with the beauty of the music and with my raw emotion that I'm struggling to contain. He doesn't say anything when he sees me crying, though. Instead, he takes my face in his hands, kissing my cheeks. Once my tears are cleared away, he brings his mouth to mine, and I melt into him, feeling at peace for the first time all day.
Chapter 24. Haftar. I had been restless all night after nearly bearing my feelings to Jenny. I don't know how much longer I can contain these emotions. They've been slowly rattling free as I get to know her, and after today, they hit me in waves. That's why I came into the music room. I thought playing would make me feel better, but with my thoughts on her, the music just flowed out of me. That half-finished piece wrote itself, and I was so eager to show her. I was thrilled when she came into the room. I knew she was going to love it, but I didn't expect to see tears streaking her cheeks when I turned to her. The sight nearly broke my heart, and I didn't mean to kiss her. I just did. That salty taste of her tears is still on my lips as I push hers apart, but neither of us minds as she leans forward to throw her arms around my neck. She's always been so hesitant, but tonight, Jenny seems to be the eager one out of us two. Thanks for reading thus far. Unfortunately, we have to reroute you to worldsofprotheka.com for the spicy version, as it's too hot for YouTube. If you use code YouTube30, you'll get additional savings on some riveting content on with the show. Orcs, gargoyles, vampires, ice monsters, demons of the dark. These beasts seek war, destruction, and power, and there's only one thing that can tame them.
Love.
This is your chance to get the uncut and unabridged audiobook bundle.
No detail is spared.
Use discount code YouTube30 for an additional 30% off of the already discounted price.
Go to worldsofprotheka.com.
Get access to countless audiobooks and discounted bundles where I talk you through every last scene.
Protheka's magic is eternal. Audio bundles will make it immersive. Chapter 25. Jenny. There was a bit of an adjustment period, and I'm not sure my father necessarily accepts what's going on, but after a week, I think he can tolerate it. My mother will probably take some more convincing, but she's not saying anything to make the situation more tense, so I'm counting it as a win. But otherwise, the week since Haftar opened his home to my parents has been almost blissful. Dad is getting better. John's injuries were minor. I think the wounds with the longest healing times are mental and emotional. The process is already underway. After speaking with my father about who attacked the house, Haftar hired back the others who hadn't been part of the mob. It certainly freed up my time, which I mainly spent making music with Haftar, or making love with Haftar. We'd settled into a pleasant routine. Which is perhaps why the unexpected arrival of a carriage throws me off and sends my heart racing. I set the Homray on its stand and look out the performance room window to see the twins interrogating the driver. It looks tense, and the driver ends up shouting, "Tell your master that the Lady Veldoasoth requests an audience." Lady Veldoasoth? Could she be one of Haftar's patrons? Could she be one of those patrons who wanted more from Haftar than just his music? The twins exchange a look, and then one of them runs to the house as a beautiful woman steps from the carriage. I try to quickly place her because she seems so familiar. Then I see Haftar step out the front door, and she runs to him, wrapping him up in a hug, and he embraces her back gladly. I have several rapid-fire emotions as feelings of jealousy and betrayal swirl around my brain. Why would he do this? After everything, he didn't even seem to care to hide it. Perhaps I'd misread the entire situation. It wasn't like we'd sat down and drew up a contract. He says I'm his muse, sure, and he loves me, maybe. But what does that mean in a relationship where one person holds all the power? He is a dark elf, I am a human. In the eyes of the law, he is a person, and I am not. Even as different as Haftar is from most dark elves, he was still raised in that world. I was foolish to think he could completely escape that sort of thinking. All the things he said to me when he first found me dripped with that sense of superiority. Maybe in his mind, this is what I'd signed on for, being with him. I could just be his human lover, his concubine while he continued to gallivant with dark elf women. My anger subsides slightly when I remember how he looked so pained while talking about noblewoman patrons expecting him to be their lover. But he made it sound like that was a thing of the past, though. When I turn back, they are coming into the house, and then I hear them coming to the music room. I'm angry, hurt, betrayed, and a little annoyed he'd bring the other woman into this space without warning me. I certainly don't want to be introduced to her. So I step quickly into a cabinet pressed against the wall. I can hear her laughing as the door opens. And I just want you to meet... Haftar trails off, looking about the room. She must have gone somewhere. I'm sure she'll turn up, but Haftar, I have news about father, the woman says. And then I realise why she looks so familiar. The resemblance between Haftar and his sister is striking. Her features are just a feminine mirror of his. I suddenly feel really ashamed of how quickly I thought ill of Haftar, though I guess he did make it seem like he'd not see her and wouldn't see her again. But her showing up would explain the enthusiastic embrace. I have a million questions. First, how could she be a lady? Marrying outside your chaste was all but forbidden, but perhaps she was one of the rare exceptions. I want to meet her, but popping out of a cabinet isn't how I would like to be introduced. It would be hard to explain why I'm eavesdropping, so I stay silent and wait. Hopefully, they'll give up waiting for me, and I can circle around or something. I really wish I had thought this out better. Kinshasa, what is it? He's dead. With his back to me, I can't see Haftar's expression upon hearing the news. All I hear is him say, "Oh, I see. When's the funeral?" "In a week." "Would I even be allowed to attend?" he asks. "Oh, don't worry. Kicking you out was entirely father's doing. I didn't come here to just pass along the news. I came to tell you mother and I want you back." "What about the other nobles?" "Other nobles? Father never officially wrote you out of the will. He was convinced that denying you your title would eventually convince you to come back. Had he not died so suddenly, things might be different. And he never said anything to anyone? Haftar, he considered you pretending to be Chief Duyu an embarrassment. Most people think you're off studying magic, and those who know otherwise are people who either disagree with his decision or simply don't care. You're free to come back at any time." "I see." Haftar's tone is flat. And since I still can't see his face, I don't know how he's reacting to all this. "So, will you come back? We can leave this shabby little place behind." Shabby? Just how wealthy and influential is Haftar's family? If this place is considered shabby, the Veldoasoth must be one of the major houses. I don't know if it's because Haftar lowers his voice or the blood rushing in my ears, but I can't make out Haftar's reply. All I do know is that while a human and a Chivduyu dark elf together would be frowned upon, a human and a Kuzuth, the noble-born, would be impossible. Sure, nobles take humans, but as playthings, not as lovers, and certainly not as anything more than that. And he'd kept this from me. Why, when he shared everything else, would he keep this from me unless he didn't want me to be a part of that world? It feels like the walls are closing in, and I can feel the tears coming. Just when I thought Haftar and I could have had something, this makes anything close to the life I want with him impossible. And to think, I spent so much energy trying to convince my mother and father that they should accept that Haftar and I were in love. Mother worried I'd just be his plaything. She warned me. And I'd naively told her it wasn't like that, when it turns out that's precisely what it was like. I want to scream, but all I can do is press myself to the back wall and cry silently. Kinshasa's voice cuts through everything when she says, "That's wonderful, brother. I'll let Mother know to expect you." From my vantage point, I can just see her go on her toes to kiss him on the cheek. We have a lot of catching up to do. Then she turns, and I can hear her footsteps retreating. I sink to the floor, all the life drained from me. I can't summon the energy to stand anymore. My heart aches for the life that I'll never have now. Haftar's going back to his family. His noble family. And I don't know what I can do now. After everything, it ends here. I won't be his plaything or some shameful secret that he hides away, fearing the political consequences of loving a human. My heart couldn't take it. I shrink back as the cabinet floods with the light streaming through the open door. Standing there, silhouetted by the sun, is Haftar. Having seen his noble sister, now the face that I'd grown to love feels like a reminder of why we can't be.
Chapter 26. Haftar. Jenny isn't nearly as quiet as she thinks. I hear her as Kinshasa is leaving, but I keep my eyes averted so my sister won't notice. It isn't until I see her leave the front of my house, going to her waiting butler, that I turn toward the cabinet where I know Jenny is hiding. I pull open the door, and although a part of me is saying I should chastise her for eavesdropping, I don't. I take in her tear-stained face, her splotchy red cheeks, and her blistered lip where she is biting down on it too hard, and I know that all I want to do is make her feel better. I open my arms, wanting to hold her close, but she doesn't bolt into them like I expect. Instead, she curls in on herself, huddling closer to the wall on the inside of the cabinet. It nearly breaks my heart. It's then that I realize how hurtful it must have been to overhear my sister. Not because of the secret that I kept, though that can't help, but because of her asking for me to come back. Jenny must be expecting me to leave her, to use her as a human and discard her. I don't know how to show her that I could never do that. Crouching down closer to the cabinet so that we are eye level, I offer her a small smile. She eyes me suspiciously, but she twists more toward me, like her body and mind are at war. Kinshasa left already, I tell her softly, hoping to ease some of her worries. Please come out. She gulps, and I watch as she struggles against all the tears that must still be stuck in her chest. Why? Aren't you going to be with your family? I sigh, sitting on the edge of the cabinet. It's killing me to keep this distance between us, and I slide my hand forward, hoping to touch her in some way. I don't think she realizes what comfort she brings me, and though I try to conceal it, it's difficult for me to be anywhere near my family. She gives me her hand in return, and I kiss her palm tenderly, sliding closer as I do. She watches me with reservation, and I curse my family for disrupting my life like this. My father was a noble, born into a great marquis family. They prided themselves on their status, caring more about image and duty than anything else. It was hard to be a kid around people like that. I swallow, uncertain where these feelings are coming from, but I need to bare my soul to Jenny. It would feel good to let it out, and even more so to let her in. He was not known for his generosity, and when he was home, we'd make ourselves scarce. He was cruel with a mean streak, and nearly anything would set him off. Like your music, she breathes. Like my music, I echo. A shiver creeps down my spine as I remember the day that I announced that I wanted to make music. something beneath the noble family I was born into according to my father. As you know, I was kicked out for it, but it was because of my title that he found it so frivolous. Jenny moves closer to me, tightening her grip on my hand. That's terrible. I shrug. I never really belonged there. I didn't fit in with my family, and it's such an old wound now. Why go picking at it? They seem to want you back, she hedges. Too bad. Going back now feels crazy, and why would I leave? I lift my hand to stroke the side of her cheek, but she said... I shake my head firmly. I agreed to visit, not to move back. I'd never consider it when you're here. Her eyes search me for what feels like an eternity, and I try to keep my breathing normal. My heart pounds painfully in my chest as I wait for her response, and just when I wonder if we'll stay silent forever, tears gather in her eyes. Jenny. I start, unable to handle watching her cry again. It only speeds up the process as they pour down her cheeks, and I don't care if I startle her as I pull her into my lap. I smooth out her hair, wiping away the tears as quickly as I can. Did I say something wrong? I ask her, and I wonder if maybe I am too much for her. I am an elf, a menace to her kind, and I consider that maybe the prospects of being with me are too much. No, she gasps, sobs taking over her body. No, never. There's a lot I'm afraid of at the moment, but more than anything, I'm afraid of a life without her by my side. We've spent too long avoiding our feelings, or at least I have. I want Jenny to be mine, for real, and to do that I have to be brave enough to tell her how I feel. I pull her back, stroking her cheeks as I stare deeply into her eyes. I hope that this doesn't upset you more, but I can't hold it in anymore, Jenny. I love you. Her bottom lip trembles as she stares up at me. I know that can be scary with the kind of world we live in, but I don't care. I've told you before, and I'll tell you again. I'll do whatever I can for you. I'll give you the whole damn planet if you want. Just ask. I love you more than anything, and I can't go another second pretending like there is anything more important to me. I need you to hear that. I'm almost breathless as I whisper, I love you. She stares at me for a beat too long, and I swear my heart is going to crack in two. Then she lunges forward, throwing her arms around my neck and nearly knocking us onto the floor. She's still sniffling, but finally she answers me. I love you, Haftar. I've loved you for so long, and I never thought you could love me back. But I do. She nods, laughing as she pulls back to look at me. But you do. Oh, she smiles at me. I love you, me. I pull her forward, pressing a kiss to my lips. My whole body feels like it is shot full of electricity. I can't believe my ears right now. But if this is a dream, no one wake me up. I'll gladly stay in a coma if that's what it takes to make this come true. When she pulls back, I feel like I could cry tears of joy, but I keep it all in. I know there is one more thing I need to ask. Jenny. I suck in a deep breath, and she tilts her head. Would you be willing to face whatever may come and be my mate? Your mate? She squeaks out. Yes. My heart is going to explode. I just know it. There's too much tension in my body, and I've been scared more times than I can count today. For the rest of my life, I want you by my side as my mate. What do you say? She leans forward, pressing a deep, long kiss to my lips. When she breaks away, I'm lightheaded from my heart stopping in my chest as I wait for her answer. Jenny looks me over, and I can see that mischievous glint in her eye. I swear she's drawing this out on purpose. Finally, she leans in real close and whispers, yes, as she plants a whisper of a kiss on my lips.
Chapter 27. Jenny. Are you ready? Dad asks. I take one last look in the mirror, even though I'm certain my appearance is immaculate. Kinshasa has seen to that. Now I know why she always looks so stunning. Magic. Yes, I say, as I take his hand, and he walks me out of the room. It's a short walk to the wooden doors of the temple's main chamber. Standing guard are the twins. I still haven't gotten used to seeing them wearing the colours of House Veldoasoth. They both nod as we approach, and I think I see a Nofna smile. At least, I think it's a Nofna. I don't know if their smiles differ, because I've never seen our Shodo smile. But I think that means I've been forgiven for deceiving them. Had I not, they wouldn't have gotten a significant raise. Guarding a nobleman pays a lot better than guarding a musician. They open the double doors for us, and I stare down the aisle. On a raised dais stands Haftar, with John flanking him, and on the other side, standing next to my destination, is Kinshasa. The temple priest stands in the centre, looking solemn. The dark elf and human ceremonies actually don't differ all that much. A lot of similar concepts, but different words. Like with Kinshasa, the title is something different that I have trouble even pronouncing, but I just think of her as the maid of honour. Part of me still thinks I'm dreaming as I walk arm in arm with my father towards them. Dad is doing his best to keep it together, but I can see at least one tear trickle down his cheek. I'm just glad to know that it's a tear of happiness. My father walks me to the dais and looks at me. I never thought I'd see this day, especially not under these circumstances. Dad, I grumble. Jenny, I'm not complaining. I'm happy for you two. Just never thought I'd be happy you were marrying a dark elf. The marriage proposal changed a lot of things. Dad was won over quickly once he realised Haftar was willing to make our bond something official, especially once he learned all that Haftar and his family would have to do to make it happen. Granted, most of that work fell to Kinshasa. She knew all the players involved and had all the connections. While Haftar had to petition the imperial family for an exception to the rules, Kinshasa was the one who pulled all the strings to ensure that when the matter came to a vote, the ayes would have it. Once Haftar told her, she immediately began contacting friends and allies. It took her 2 months' worth of work, but she managed to do what I thought was impossible. Marrying outside your caste is rare, but exceptions have been made. But humans exist outside and below the caste system. I'm not sure of all the details, but I think Haftar had to give up some form of power or influence for this to be allowed, not that it ever interested him. There's so much about the court I'm still learning, but there was apparently a whole other unexpected scandal with an archduke, Kral Ishiraya, I believe, being one of the most prominent names to side with Haftar's petition. We decided to keep the wedding ceremony small, just close friends and family, for 2 reasons. First, we scheduled it only a month after we got the court's support, just in case someone on the court decided to change their mind. But also, because even though it was accepted legally, there were those who looked down upon such a union. Haftar said the small ceremony would be easier than having to deal with sneering nobles on what is supposed to be a day of celebration. Not that he isn't willing to defend me. Some rifts were formed after Haftar's decision, and there were a few terse exchanges and one fight that came to blows, which he refuses to discuss the details of. I think he doesn't want to have to repeat the things that were said about me. I smile as my father deposits me at Kinshasa's side, kisses me on the cheek, and takes his seat next to Mum. My mother remained suspicious of Haftar's motives until only recently, it seems. Again, Kinshasa's doing. Haftar may have no interest in court intrigue, but his sister is apparently a great negotiator. With the passing of their father, she's finally allowed to shine. In the 3 months since we met, I've come to consider her one of my closest friends. She's not just kind for a dark elf, but one of the kindest people I've ever met. And I think it was her sweetness that convinced my mother the dark elves weren't engaged in a long game of psychological torture. Across the aisle from my parents sits Duchess Helena Veldoasoth, Haftar's mother. For a woman in mourning, she's eager for a celebration. While she hasn't said it out loud, I think she was looking for an excuse not to have to look like she was sad. There's a whole lot of Haftar's family dynamic I'm still learning, but from what I gathered until a sudden illness took him, Duke Rolomir Veldoasoth had done a great job at alienating his family. While Helena hasn't said anything, I don't think she's too sad about her husband's passing. Being human, it seems as though some of the House Veldoasoth servants are more chatty with me, because I heard the rumours they wouldn't dare speak in the presence of the dark elves of the family. Some believe that Duke Rolomy's sudden illness might have had some help from one or both of the ladies of the house. Whether that's true or not, it seems this union would be forbidden if he was still alive, so I can't say that I'm sad he has passed. Either way, it's good to see the Duchess smile. While Kinshasa handled all the courtly matters to make this day happen, Helena took over the logistics of the day. However, she did consult Mom, which I think was another nail in the coffin of Mum's ill feelings towards Haftar and his family. I doubt Mum will be attending any parties, but she gets along with Kinshasa and Helena. I turn to see Haftar looking very handsome in his finery. He looks all the noble he is meant to be, and I'm about to become his lady. I'm barely aware as the temple priest starts speaking. I'm too busy getting lost in Haftar's eyes. But I'm brought back to myself when it's time to say our vows. As Haftar promises to remain faithful, I have no doubt it's true. Not since I went a little crazy with jealousy and hid in the music room's cabinet have I had doubts about how much he cares for me. That's been another blessing of Kinshasa, handling the court, and Helena handling the wedding. It gave Haftar and me plenty of time to work out our doubts and insecurities. That's how I know when it's my turn to promise to remain faithfully by him, he doesn't have any doubts as well. After the final words from the temple priest, Haftar and I exchange our first kiss as husband and wife. It's a quick affair because we both know that we have trouble staying clothed when our lips meet for long. And there's a night of celebration ahead of us. Besides, we will have plenty of time for deeper, more passionate kissing away from the prying eyes of others. With the priest's final blessing upon the union, I turn and hug Kinshasa. I don't know if I can ever thank you for all that you've done, I say, hugging her tightly. You can just name your firstborn after me, and we can call it even, she laughs. Then she lowers her voice. I promise not to let my mother keep you too long, so you two can go work on that. Then it's my turn to laugh. Our gathering afterward is small as well, and, as Kinshasa promised, brief. Haftar and I play a duet before we dance. It just seemed right.
Chapter 28. Haftar. I'm exhausted, Jenny announces as I open the door to our bedroom for her. I can see it in every move she makes, and it's not lost on me that she's limping a little. I kick the door behind me, swinging it shut, and scoop her up in my arms. She squeals, smacking me, but I ignore her. What are you doing? She hisses as I drop to my knees before the bed. You're limping, I remark, undoing her shoes, and I spot the culprit. There's a nasty blister on the back of her foot. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugs. I was enjoying myself and didn't really notice. I kiss the inside of her ankle as I rub my hand over the red mark, healing it as I brush my lips up the inside of her leg. She sighs against me, and when I finish, I look up at her with a smirk. There. Her eyebrows scrunch together, and she lifts her foot in the air, inadvertently spreading her legs before me. She inspects her skin and looks back at me, seemingly more confused than ever. How did you... I wiggle my hands in front of her. Magic. I'd been practicing more now that I saw some uses for it, and I'm by no means great, though I've definitely improved. She shakes her head, burning red. Right. I forget sometimes. I grip the hem of her dress, sliding it up her thighs as my mouth trails kisses behind. You'll never have to hurt again, I whisper against her skin. Tell me, and I will always fix it for you. I knew there were some benefits to marrying you, she teases, and I cut my eyes up at her. Just you wait. I jerk the dress over her head, leaving her in her white, thin undergarments. My eyes roam over her as I toss my shirt onto the floor and undo my pants. You might want to get rid of those. She flicks the straps from her shoulders, but otherwise just stares at me. Why? I unlatch my pants, unsheathing my growing member and palming it. I raise my eyebrows at her. Do I need a reason? Her eyes are on my shaft as I stroke myself, her hands moving along her legs like she's thinking about touching herself. I'd never let her if she tried. That's my job. But it's fun to watch her squirm. Yes, she breathes, leaning toward me, but I take a step back. You won't get anything until you listen, I growl, and finally she looks back up at me. Her eyes nearly cut through me, but she finally unlatches her bra and drops it to the mattress. I tighten my grasp on me as her chest bounces free, but she ignores my hand, holding my gaze as she slides off the mattress. She takes a few steps forward, her hands gliding down from her collarbones and gripping her chest. She twists at her peaks, and I have to grind my teeth to keep my mind clear, or I might tackle her on the bed. Instead, I watch breathlessly as Jenny saunters across the room to me, stopping just before me and running her hands down her legs. She pulls her underwear down to her ankles with her fingers, and slowly stands back up, watching me the entire time. There, she whispers, kicking the underwear free of her feet. Happy? I'm about to be. I cup her face, crashing her lips to mine, and she moans against them. Sliding my hands under her thighs, I lift her up so that her legs wrap around my waist. Without breaking the kiss, I walk into the bathroom, and she jerks away from me when she hears a splash. What the... Surprise? I say softly, and I have to admit I'm a little timid. I wanted to do something nice to her after our wedding, and I just hoped that she would like it. I asked my sister, and although it felt a little weird, I think it paid off. Jenny looks down at the massive bathtub I'm standing in. Rose petals float on the surface, and steam floats up around us. The air is scented with rose and coconut from the oils added to the bathroom. What do you think? I ask. Her eyes sweep back up to me. She bites her lower lip before a massive smile slides across her face. I love you. Her lips crash against mine, and I take that as my cue to sink into the water. We both gasp a little when the warm water flushes up our skin, but soon I'm leaning back against the edge with Jenny situated across my lap. It's not too hot, is it? I ask her in between kisses. She shakes her head. No, it's great. She pulls back just enough to press her forehead to mine and stare into my eyes. Thank you for doing this for me. It's really sweet, and I do love it. I kiss her shoulder. Anything for you, my love. Her cheeks are flushed, and I'm not sure if it's from my words or the water. All I know is when her mouth meets mine again, there's a renewed fever to them. Let's follow this happy ending all the way to its exciting conclusion. Head over to worldsofprotheka.com and use code YouTube30 for all the unabridged, lovely details. Back to our story. In a world of elves, demons, and liches.
What would you choose?
Power?
Or passion?
Would you stab the monster in the back?
Or take him to bed?
The immersive fantasy audiobook bundle has it all.
Go to worldsofprotheka.com to get access.
Use code YouTube30 to get an additional 30% off.
Protheka's magic is eternal. Audio bundles will make it immersive. Chapter 29. Jenny. I grip my hands together to hide how they tremble as I stare out the window. I've never been in the city. When Haftar suggested we go for our honeymoon, I was hesitant, but he insisted they had the best restaurants for us to go to, and I could spend more time with his family, who I had taken a liking to. I eventually agreed, knowing that it would be nice to get out even if I am terrified of other elves' reactions. Haftar leans across the carriage to touch my knee, and I look at him. He offers me a small smile. Relax, I want this to be fun for you. I nod, trying to swallow back my fear as we pull up to the place we are staying. It's massive, and each room is the size of 3 of my homes. Sometimes I feel a little suffocated by my change in lifestyle. We're going to meet Mom and Kinshasa at the restaurant for lunch, okay? I nod, though my mouth goes dry. Don't stress so much about it. That's easy for him to say, but he's not a human in an elf's world. I'm still not even positive his mum likes me with the limited time we've spent together. I might throw up just thinking about the lunch. I managed to dress without vomiting or fainting, a feat in and of itself, but by the time we arrive at the restaurant, I've turned bright white. I sway as I exit the carriage, and Haftar catches me. "Don't make me carry you up there." I straighten, because that would only be more embarrassing than falling flat on my face, and together we enter the building. The room is massive with huge round tables everywhere, and Haftar's smile lights up as he spots two people in the back. Kinshasa smiles at me, and she stands to give me a hug as Haftar greets his mother. "Oh, Jenny, it's so good to see you again." She squeezes me tight. "You look wonderful." My heart is thundering, but I manage to control the tremble in my voice as I tell her, "So do you." "Always stunning, Kinshasa." Her smile is radiant, and she turns toward their mother, who is watching me expectantly. Haftar hooks his arm around my waist, and I wonder if he can tell my knees are about to give out. "Mum," he says, "you remember Jenny?" I incline my head, bowing a little before her. "It is very nice to see you again." I have to bite back my squeal of surprise as she sweeps me up into her arms. "Sorry, dear, but in this family we hug." I blink in shock before bringing my arms around, and she squeezes me closer. I am so glad to get some intimate time with Haftar's mate. She pulls back, gripping my upper arms. "The wedding just kept us so busy, and I want to get to know you better." Her eyes cut over to her son, and she leans in like she has to tell me a secret. "I need to hear all about how you were able to win this one over. He's not an easy man to please." Chuckling, I nod, and Haftar rolls his eyes. "Oh, don't start with me. Sit. I'm starving." We all sit, and his mother immediately turns toward me. "Now, Jenny, I am dying to know how you two met. No one has been able to tell me the story. Being mated is rare these days. Most people marry for power exchanges or not at all. I, for one, never wanted that for my kids." I notice how she doesn't say for herself, but I hold that in. My father works for Haftar, and I was drawn in by his music one day. It was so beautiful, I just kept coming back. My hands are trembling as I confess this, uncertain of how she'll take that. Harina just clutches her chest, grinning widely. "That is so sweet." She looks at her daughter. Falling in love with his music. There's no one better for my boy than someone who loves his passion. The tension starts to seep out of me, and the more I talk with Haftar's mother and sister, the easier it is for me to relax. I still tense up every time a Zagfair comes near, disdain written plainly over their face, and the other patrons are not so subtly talking about me. It's easier to take knowing that his family seems to like me. After the third time that someone sneers at me, though, she reaches over and pats my knee. "Ignore them," she tells me. "They are only jealous that they could never be worthy of the treatment you receive. They lack the refinement that you carry, and that's not something that is defined by your race." My heart soars as she says it, and as Kinshasa nods along, I realise that Haftar's kindness must run in his mother's side. I remember him telling me his father was a cruel man, but I see none of it here. Only pure kindness and acceptance. It makes it easier to relax, not just with Harina and Kinshasa, but also with Haftar as he takes me out into the city. The stairs increase tenfold without the Marquise there, but Haftar doesn't even seem to notice them. He takes me around, showing me his favourite places like museums and concert halls. We even take a few tours to areas of the city he has never been before. As the sun sinks low in the sky, he takes me back to our room and tells me to get dressed. When I get out of the shower, I see that a dress has been laid out for me, and I eye him. He only shrugs. "I think it will look perfect on you tonight." It's a long black dress, more formal than anything I've ever owned, and it's decorated in silver studs. It looks like the stars in the night sky, and I feel extremely inadequate in it. The look in Haftar's eyes tells me I'm wrong for feeling that way, though. His pupils dilate as he drinks me, and he presses his knuckles to his mouth, shaking his head as his gaze rakes down my body. Maybe we should just stay here. I narrow my eyes at him. I worked too hard on my hair and makeup to just stay in the hotel on my honeymoon. He rolls his eyes. Fine. He offers me his arm, clad in a well-made suit jacket. Let's go. Haftar has withheld all details of our dinner from me. He just keeps saying he wants to give me the best, give me what I deserve. I don't know what that means because I've been taught that in this life, I deserve a run-down shack and burlap sack. Only in his arms do I feel like I am more. The carriage rolls to a stop in front of a very tall building, and I tip my head back to look at it. It seems to be another place to stay, the lobby large and ornate like ours. But Haftar guides me to the elevator. As we emerge at the top floor, I notice the elves here don't stare at me with disgust. They seem to be more refined than regular Zag fare, and they only look at me with vague interest before tearing their eyes away. They must know better. All of that is wiped from my mind as one of the elves leads us out to the seating area. It is a rooftop restaurant with heaters sprinkled about and the best view of the city. From up here I can see anything. I sit at our table, which is on the edge, and take it all in. The stars and the lights of the city blend together into one big twinkling backdrop, and I now understand the dress. I whip my head around to look at Haftar, only to see him watching me. What do you think? It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it. He nods his head to the elf that sets a bottle of fizzing drink down on our table. I wanted to take you somewhere spectacular, but even here, you outshine the stars. I blush, looking down at the table. Haftar. He pushes a glass toward me and I take it. He lifts his own to me, and with a grin he says, "A toast. To us and our new beginnings." My heart flutters as I clink my glass against his. To us. Chapter 30. Jenny. Haftar guides me upstairs to our room. Really, it's our own floor, and I try not to get too swept up in how tired I am as we pass through the bedroom. He seems excited, and I wonder what surprise he has in store for me. I think that is the most surprising thing about Haftar. He loves to surprise me. My favourite food, a bath with oils, restringing an instrument I've been plucking at. It's little things that remind me how much he loves me every day. He stops just inside the bathroom, turning to face me. It's no bathtub. He chuckles, remembering our wedding night, though we've probably done it on every surface in his mansion since then. But I hope you like it. He steps out of the way, and where there was a mirrored wall earlier, the two outer walls of the bathroom have turned transparent. I step forward, staring at it. What is this? You seemed so taken with our rooftop dinner, Haftar answers, walking up behind me. I thought you might want another view of the stars. It's gorgeous, I murmur, approaching the edge. I can see out across the entire city from here. Not good for a bathroom, though. He shakes his head at me. It's solid on the outside. No one can see up here, but we can see out. A two-way mirror, I realise. I grin, turning to him. I absolutely love it. Good. He plants a kiss on my cheek. Now come shower under the stars with me. Haftar cuts the water on to warm up before coming back to me. He kisses me long and slow, his hands on my waist, and as he starts to pull away, he tugs my shirt up and over my head. These two have had quite a journey, haven't they? Thanks for sticking with them through thick and thin. Find all the details of their exciting conclusion over at worldsofprotheka.com. You know the drill. Use code YouTube30 for additional savings on amazing content. I roll my head to the side, looking at him with a soft smile, and the sparkle in his eyes seems brighter than any outside this window. How did I get so lucky? He nips at my nose. I'm the lucky one, he whispers. My heart does a flip, and for a moment, I can barely fathom all that my life has become. Haftar is so much more than I could have ever dreamed for in my life, and to be his mate, to be so loved by him, I couldn't want anything more than that. And I don't. I know he would give me anything that I want, but he's my everything. That will always be more than enough for me.